Welcome to Wife Cheating Story. I hope you have an enjoyable and relaxing time listening. Let's get started.
I still remember the moment I played the phone recording and heard my wife's hushed confession. "Meet me at that motel around noon, okay? Evan can't suspect a thing." Her tone trembled with excitement, and my heart slammed to a stop. We had a 4-year-old daughter. Did that mean nothing? A week earlier, a nurse's phone call revealed Sophie's blood type couldn't possibly match mine. Instantly, the world shifted. One damning clip, "Brian said to meet him again, it's the perfect time," shattered every illusion of our happily ever after. I questioned everything: our marriage, our child's paternity, and my own sanity. How far did her betrayal go? Before we dive into the full story, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. And if you're enjoying this tale, don't forget to subscribe and tap the notification bell so you never miss any of our upcoming stories. I first noticed something remarkable about my wife Lila the day she wandered into my engineering design lecture at Kincaid State University, looking like she'd come straight from a California surf magazine. Long, sun-bleached hair, blue eyes that flickered with curiosity, and a confident stride that made guys sit up straighter in their seats. She plopped herself down next to me and said, "Hey, I'm Lila Weber. Want to share a book?" I remember the exact shade of pink on her nails because my brain went blank for a second. We were seniors, well, I was a senior. She was actually a junior who'd skipped a grade and was brilliant in her own right. I introduced myself, stammering out, "Evan Carter," while fumbling to open my battered textbook. We became a team that semester, completing group projects with a smooth synergy that made me suspect we'd work well in pretty much anything life threw at us. She was warm, but not in the flirtatious cheerleader sense. She was affectionate in a casual way, like she believed the whole world was basically on her side. I was drawn to that optimism, especially because I came from a family of cynical realists. She wasn't just talented academically. She had some intangible glow that followed her into every room, inspiring either admiration or envy, often both. And somehow, in the midst of final exams and deadlines, we fell into a relationship as natural as breathing. 4 years later, we were married. Our wedding was small. Lila wanted something intimate, a backyard gathering under the late June sun at my parents' house in northern Illinois. My folks had set up a gazebo near a row of sugar maples, and we exchanged our vows to the sound of birds and distant lawnmowers. My father, a crusty old-school mechanic, bawled like a baby when he walked me up the aisle. I had no mother to do that job, as she'd passed away in my teens. Lila's sister Betty was her maid of honor, and my best friend Brian stood on my side, giving me jabs in the ribs when I nearly forgot my lines. A year after the wedding, I got a secure position at a company called Rocketdyne Servos. We specialized in aircraft components, landing gear assemblies, engine rotor parts, advanced servo motors. We'd moved to a pleasant suburban town called Mayfield Springs, chosen mainly for the big backyard that Lila loved. This was the kind of place with wide, clean streets, kids riding bikes until dusk, and a strong sense of neighborly cheer. Brian and Betty also lived here, just across the cul-de-sac. It felt like we'd hit some kind of domestic jackpot, or so I thought. Surrounded by weeping willows and playgrounds, with grocery stores that still bagged your groceries with a friendly smile. Before long, Lila and Betty took on part-time bookkeeping positions at a local furniture gallery, Waterstone and Sons. They worked flexible hours while Brian and I slogged full-time. Brian was in software development, making decent money at a startup. He was tall, wide-shouldered, and had this vibe that could put anyone at ease. We'd roomed together briefly in college. It was in some old dorm where the windows wouldn't close in winter, and the heater worked half the time. We bonded over learning how to cook cheap ramen and how to fix a leaky faucet by ourselves. We liked double dates, or casual weekend barbecues, with Brian manning the grill. Betty, a year older than Lila, was sweet but with a sharper edge of wit. She was the type who could politely cut someone to ribbons with a smile. I actually appreciated that about her. She protected her family fiercely. At least that was the side of her I knew in the early days. One Saturday, we all gathered in my backyard to watch some big game on a portable projector screen. Our next-door neighbors brought fold-out chairs. Betty kept the kids in check. Her second baby was barely a toddler at that point, while Brian handled the burgers. I remember him glancing at Lila from time to time. I chalked it up to friendliness or simple admiration. She was wearing a light green sundress that day, hair in a casual knot. Maybe it was innocent. Maybe I was naive. Around that time, Lila and I began trying to have children. The first year, we didn't worry too much, just got used to married life. We had our honeymoon in Honolulu, a trip so packed with snorkeling and late nights on the hotel balcony that we returned sunburnt and extremely broke. But once the second year passed without a pregnancy, we got a bit antsy. By the third year, Lila began to cry silently in bed sometimes, pressing her face against my chest, asking me if I still wanted kids. Of course I did. Her sadness grew more palpable month by month. We visited fertility clinics, got tested. The results for me were discouraging. Low sperm count, not zero, but low enough that doctors said conceiving the natural way might be a drawn-out process if it happened at all. It's like playing a lottery, one urologist told me, but you do have a ticket in your hand. Lila pretended to be stoic at first, but I knew it gnawed at her. She'd grown up babysitting in her neighborhood, dreamed of having a big family. Over dinner one evening, some uninspired stir-fry, I noticed tears in her eyes as she pushed vegetables around her plate. When I reached over to hold her hand, she gave me a shaky smile and muttered, "I just want to be a mom. I feel like my body's failing me. Or are we failing each other?" That half-question, half-statement, stung worse than any test result. Sometime in the midst of these fertility frustrations, Betty gave birth to her third child. It was a boy named Mason. She and Brian had 2 girls and now a boy. While we were genuinely happy for them, a small tightness formed in my chest whenever we visited. Their kids were adorable, running around in the backyard that was nearly identical to ours, squealing and laughing. Lila and I tried not to let envy show, but it sometimes manifested in awkward pauses when Brian joked about the chaos of fatherhood. One day, after a particularly painful medical appointment, I slumped on my porch steps. Brian ambled over with a bottle of craft beer in hand, some local brew he claimed tasted like a citrus orchard. He offered me one. "Rough day, buddy?" he asked, taking a seat. "Yeah," I answered softly, cracking open the bottle. "You know we tried. We keep trying. Seems like the universe just isn't cooperating." He nodded. "Hey man, I'm sure something will work out. You guys are a great pair. Technology's advanced. There are options." He said it in that casual Brian way. In retrospect, maybe it was a hint. Maybe he was gauging how open I'd be to unorthodox solutions. But back then, I just thought he meant IVF or adoption. I didn't read anything suspicious into it. I simply said, "Thanks, we'll figure it out," and tried to change the subject to weekend sports. Then, miracle of miracles, Lila got pregnant. We had done every test, every doctor visit, and were on the brink of exploring in vitro fertilization. Then, one random Thursday, just after I came home from a 10-hour shift, she bounded up to me with a homemade pregnancy test in her hand. "We're having a baby, Evan. It's positive." I swear my knees nearly gave out. I stared at the test stick, then at her wide, gleaming eyes. She was so excited she practically jumped into my arms. I remember stuttering, "But how? Are you sure?" She nodded wildly, tears in her eyes. "The nurse will confirm it tomorrow, but the lines are there. I'm late, and this is real." We both cried from sheer relief. The next morning, the clinic confirmed it. Over the coming weeks, we experienced that wave of happiness only an expecting couple can feel. Calls to family, choosing baby names, transforming our second guest room into a nursery, the works. When Sophie was born, I was in that delivery room, numb with excitement and fear, and then they placed her tiny, wrinkled, and yowling into my arms. She had that scrunched-up face that looked oddly like a miniature version of me. At least that's what I believed. We named her Sophie because Lila liked Sophie's World, the novel about philosophy. I was too overwhelmed to argue about name picks. Honestly, the moment that newborn curled her fingers around mine, I was lost. That was my baby girl. After Sophie's birth, we stumbled through typical new parent chaos. 3 a.m. feedings, infinite diaper changes, frantic calls to pediatricians over minor rashes. Lila was radiant, though. She had a motherly glow, and I thought we'd conquered our main life hurdle. We took loads of pictures. Brian and Betty came over constantly, offering help. Betty would cradle Sophie and laugh about how she loved that new baby smell, while Brian gave me fatherhood tips. Those next 4 years breezed by. Sophie grew into a lively toddler who adored pink dresses, chocolate pudding, and playing with her cousins next door. She was that kind of kid who'd chat up strangers at the grocery store. The typical extroverted blonde toddler who made everyone grin. I was proud in a quiet, satisfied way. On Saturday mornings, I'd flop onto the couch with her perched on my lap, watch cartoons, and think, I'm the luckiest guy in the world. It was, in many respects, a standard suburban story, until it wasn't. By the time Sophie turned 4, Lila began mentioning a second child. Sophie could use a sibling, she'd say, flipping through catalogs for bunk beds. She'd drop subtle lines like, don't you think she'll be bored once she's in kindergarten with no baby at home? I was open to it, though part of me was anxious we'd go through the same fertility struggles again. Yet something in Lila's eyes seemed more than mere maternal longing, a desperation I hadn't seen before. She'd been checking her ovulation calendar obsessively. At night, she'd drift off to sleep with parenting books stacked on her nightstand. I chalked it up to how fiercely she wanted a bigger family, ignoring the mild sense of tension I sometimes felt stirring between us. Meanwhile, Brian and Betty had their own hectic life. With 3 kids, they were in constant motion t-ball practice, piano lessons, doctor's checkups. I admired how calm Betty remained while juggling it all. And I noticed how often Brian glanced at Sophie, sometimes even picking her up and spinning her around. I teased him about spoiling her. He only grinned and ruffled her hair like an affectionate uncle. If a flicker of oddness crossed his expression, I dismissed it. I still remember one evening about a month before Sophie started pre-kindergarten. Lila and I were doing the dishes. She paused, dish towel in hand, and asked, Evan, be honest. Do you really want another baby? Or are you just humoring me? I set a plate down. No, I do want one. As long as you're up for it, I'm in. She gave this shaky half-smile. You know how it took forever last time. We might not be so lucky. Or maybe we will. Her eyes drifted to the window, across the yard where lights glowed in Brian and Betty's kitchen. I wondered if she was comparing our family dynamic to her sister's. I wrapped an arm around her. Let's not stress yet. We got Sophie. She was the best surprise of our lives, right? She nodded, looking troubled, but didn't say more. If there was a moment to press her about what was really going on, that could have been it. But I let it slide. A couple of weeks later, the local elementary school required all incoming pre-K kids to have a medical checkup, including blood type data. I took Sophie to the nurse's station at the school, figuring it'd be quick. She whined about the finger prick, but calmed when I promised ice cream afterward. The nurse, a woman named Nancy, noticed me reading the forms and said, We can add a record of your blood type as well, Mr. Carter. In case of emergencies, it's good for the school to have an immediate relative's info. I shrugged. Sure, no problem. So she drew a small sample from me, labeled a second vial for Sophie, and we left. I barely thought twice about it. That small, routine step was about to demolish everything I believed about my marriage, but I had no idea then. The phone call came 2 days later, smack in the middle of my shift. I was working on a blueprint review for a new servo prototype, cramming data into a spreadsheet. My desk phone rang. The number on the screen was the school. Confused, I grabbed it. Hello? Hi, is this Evan Carter? It was Nurse Nancy's voice. Yes, everything okay with Sophie? My heart jumped a bit, imagining an accident on the playground. Nancy paused. Mr. Carter, Sophie is fine physically. I'm calling about the blood test results we received. Her tone was subdued, which made me uneasy. What's the issue? I said, trying to sound calm. She exhaled, the phone line crackling. Your daughter's ABO typing is O positive. Your sample came back as AB. Sir, there's no medical way for an AB parent to have an O child. I'm wondering if Sophie could be adopted, or if there might be a mix-up in the samples, but we labeled everything carefully. I felt an immediate whooshing in my ears, as if all the air had been sucked out of the room. What are you saying? I croaked. I knew exactly what she was implying, but wanted to hear her say it. In genetics, she explained softly. A child with blood type O can't come from a father with AB. It's not possible. That means you're not her biological father, or there's some other serious error. I'm sorry. We see this rarely, but it does happen. My mind blanked. I mumbled something about checking again, then hung up. A tidal wave of rage, disbelief, heartbreak rolled through me. My sweet little Sophie, not mine? But what the hell? Lila's voice echoed in my head. We're pregnant, Evan. It's a miracle. Miracle indeed. I stood by the water cooler at work for nearly an hour after that call, ignoring the rest of the day's tasks. I stared at the flickering fluorescent light overhead, trying to piece together logical explanations. Could the lab have messed up? Could Sophie's sample have gotten swapped with another kid's? A million improbable scenarios whipped through my mind, but deep down, I felt a sick certainty. Lila had cheated. She had to. That's the simplest explanation. Another man fathered Sophie. My reflection in the water cooler's chrome side looked ghostly pale. Focus, Carter. Think. I had an entire plan due tomorrow, but I couldn't concentrate on anything except a raging question. Who? I eventually told my boss I felt ill and left early. I drove to a small city park and sat on a bench near the duck pond, trying not to scare the old ladies feeding breadcrumbs to the mallards. The more I let the truth sink in, the angrier I became. I recalled every time Lila and I had, theoretically, made love to conceive. Was it all a sham? She must have known that baby wasn't mine. Why act so normal all these years? Vengeance brewed in my gut, but I needed proof, real, undeniable proof. That evening, I returned home but did my best to pretend all was well. Lila was her usual cheerful self, cooking meatloaf, wearing an apron dusted with flour. Sophie was in the living room coloring. Part of me wanted to storm in, accuse Lila on the spot. You lied to me. You gave me a child that isn't mine. But something held me back. A quiet, calculating part of me said, no, gather evidence first. So after dinner, once Lila took Sophie up for bedtime stories, I slipped into the garage. I rummaged through an old trunk until I found an unused digital voice recorder I'd gotten on sale ages ago. Not fancy, but I remembered it had a phone line adapter. The next morning, I picked up more gear at a local electronics shop, a device that could be wired to our cordless phone base station, set to auto-record any outgoing calls. In a swirl of bitter irony, I set it up the following afternoon while Lila was at her shift. A part of me felt like some spy, a man I never thought I'd be, but I had a new determination. Someone fathered my child, that someone is screwing my wife, or did in the past. I'm going to find out who. While the phone recorder was step 1, step 2 was verifying Sophie's DNA. I couldn't rely on the school nurse alone. The next day, I took Sophie to the local walk-in clinic under the guise of pediatric checkups. I paid for a private lab test with a cheek swab, for me and for her. I told Sophie it was just a game. She giggled, clueless. Inside, I wanted to break something every time I looked at her small face, so like my own in spirit, but genetically not at all. I hated that I felt a flicker of resentment, which quickly curdled into guilt. She's innocent, I reminded myself. This is all on Lila. The clinic promised results in about a week. That was the longest week of my life. During that waiting period, I plugged a USB stick into the phone recorder each night, scanning for suspicious calls. The first few days yielded nothing big mundane calls about groceries, Sophie's ballet class, a painter to redo the spare bedroom. Then, on a Friday afternoon, I hit the jackpot, or maybe the devil's pot. It was a conversation with Betty. Lila, laughing nervously. I know. I can't believe we're doing it again, but I'm so anxious. Brian said to meet at the motel around noon, right? Betty. Yes, he'll be there. Listen, we have to be extra careful. Evan can't suspect a thing. Lila, voice trembling with excitement. He won't. I told him I was working late at the furniture store. Betty, thanks for covering for me. I owe you. Betty, soft sigh. Just remember our agreement. This is about making a baby, not anything else. I stared at my laptop in utter shock, re-listening to confirm I hadn't misheard. Brian? My best friend Brian? They mentioned him by name. They mentioned making a baby. What the? I hammered pause, fists clenched so hard my knuckles went white. That was all I needed to confirm a suspicion that had hovered at the edges of my mind ever since I got that phone call. Brian had fathered Sophie, and now they were planning something again, apparently. Holy hell, Betty was complicit? She was the one scheduling these motel meets? My stomach twisted in fury and betrayal. I'd confided in Brian about my fertility issues. He listened sympathetically while sneaking behind my back to impregnate my wife like some sick plan to help me have a child. And Betty was in on it too, or at least had knowledge of it. My hand shook, nearly breaking the USB in half as I yanked it out of the recorder, but I forced myself to remain calm. Evidence was crucial. The phone call lasted a bit longer, with more explicit details about a rendezvous. I felt nauseous hearing them talk so casually about how to avoid suspicion. I decided to confront them only once I had the clinic's DNA test result in black and white. Over the next few days, I meticulously changed the memory stick in the phone recorder every morning, labeling them with date and time, building a case that could stand up to any denial. I barely spoke to Lila. She asked if I was okay. I lied through my teeth, claiming work stress. She nodded sympathetically. The hypocrisy was maddening. Meanwhile, a new character popped up in Lila's call logs, a man named Marcus. The phone call was short, just her telling him to confirm some appointment. I couldn't glean if it was a coworker or someone else, but it raised my suspicions that Lila might have used more than just Brian to conceive, or maybe Marcus was simply a random furniture gallery client. I also overheard a snippet in which Lila and Betty discussed a hush-hush way to pay for a procedure, but the details were vague. It could have been referencing in vitro, or it might have been code for renting motel rooms. My paranoia skyrocketed. The DNA test arrived in the mail one late afternoon. I was alone, having ducked out of work early again. The envelope had the clinic's letterhead, my name on the front. It felt heavy despite only containing a few sheets of paper. With trembling fingers, I tore it open. Probability of paternity, 0%. I already knew it, but seeing it spelled out so clinically made me want to punch a hole through my living room wall. Everything blackened around me. My heart hammered. A sense of cosmic humiliation filled my chest, accompanied by a lethal swirl of heartbreak and rage. I sat down at my kitchen table, stared at the clock. 3:42 p.m. Lila would be picking Sophie up from preschool soon, back by 5. Brian would probably get off work around 6. Betty, too. My mind conjured images of them smirking behind my back. I wanted to throw up. Instead, I forced myself to breathe. Plan, Carter. Plan. I grabbed a pen and a notebook, scribbling bullet points. Move half of our bank savings to a new personal account. Cancel joint credit cards. Contact an attorney for divorce proceedings. Collect more phone evidence, especially if Lila tries to schedule another meeting. Serve legal papers. Then decide whether to physically confront Brian. Yeah, the physical confrontation was definitely on the table. I wasn't sure if I'd be able to hold back once I saw him, but I wanted my finances secure first. No sense letting them blindside me further. I got that attorney Keith Lowry, a no-nonsense ex-military type who specialized in family law. When I described the situation, he nodded grimly. I've seen it before. Often the victim of infidelity comes in with just an emotional meltdown. You've done your homework, though. Documentation is powerful. I handed him a flash drive with some phone recordings, plus the lab results. He whistled softly as he scanned them. You have a strong case. Child support might even go the other way. You can sue her lover for paternal expenses if he's the real father. I blinked. You can do that? In certain states, yes. It's not common, but we can try. Before leaving his office, I arranged to pull half of the marital assets and open a new account at a separate bank. Keith said that was legal, as we were both equally entitled to the funds pre-divorce. Just make sure you keep a paper trail, he warned, and do it quickly. The next day, I took a long lunch break, visited the bank, and quietly transferred half our checking and savings. I canceled the joint credit cards, asked for new ones in my name. I felt cold, methodical, not the warm husband or father I'd been for years. I was in full crisis mode, and I refused to be the pathetic victim in this scenario. The phone recorder revealed even more damning calls that week. Brian and Lila were brazen, discussing a recent meeting at a cheap motel off Highway 16. They threw around lines like, "We have to be sure this time, and Betty doesn't suspect that we're meeting again, does she? Wait, So maybe Betty was being lied to as well? Or maybe she was only partially aware. The contradictions piled up. I was furious to realize how often it happened under my nose. While I was busting my tail at Rocketdyne, they were renting shady motels in broad daylight. The phone recordings played on my laptop like a horror show. The pillow talk was the worst, moaning, murmurs about how thrilling it was. I forced myself to listen, documenting timestamps. This was beyond a one-off fling. It was repeated, unashamed betrayal. Yet they also talked about clinical fertility. They used that phrase sometimes like it was some excuse, a justification, as if repeated sexual encounters could be labeled clinical. My jaw tightened. My attorney said this actually might help me show premeditation, but none of it could quell the raging betrayal in my gut. Finally, a message from Lila to Betty pinned down that next big rendezvous. Tuesday afternoon. Perfect. That gave me the weekend to move funds, finalize divorce documents with Keith, and perhaps set up a confrontation. I confronted her? That's an understatement. I was fully prepared to incinerate my old life. I didn't want to remain with a woman who systematically lied about our child's paternity, who carried on an affair with my best friend. The only question was whether I'd keep things purely legal, or if my rage would get the better of me. At times, I pictured smashing Brian's face in. Then I'd picture Sophie's wide eyes if she found out I was behind bars for assault. Or worse. But my anger was so potent, the idea of letting him walk away unscathed seemed impossible. On Monday, I parked a few houses down from ours in the early afternoon and watched from my tinted driver's window. Sure enough, I saw Brian's car in our driveway. The garage door was half-lowered, but I could see him slip inside. At that same moment, my phone buzzed. It was Lila. She said she was busy stripping wallpaper in the spare room and could I pick up Sophie from day camp? I let it go to voicemail. I left after an hour, having witnessed Brian's exit. They clearly used our home, my bed, most likely for their twisted baby-making. By Tuesday morning, I had the legal documents in my briefcase. I was ready. Tuesday dawned eerily calm. The sky was overcast, casting our neighborhood in a gray hush. Lila was gone before I even woke up, leaving a note on the counter that she'd be helping a friend move furniture during the afternoon. I crumpled that note in my fist, hearing the mocking echo behind those lies. I went about my day as if normal, shower, coffee, driving to Rocketdyne. My co-workers greeted me, oblivious to the emotional meltdown stirring beneath my stiff expression. I breezed through some emails, mentally rehearsing how I'd confront them. At 11 a.m., I slipped away, hopped into my sedan, and drove to the motel they'd mentioned. It was a rundown place called Lakeside Lodge, which was comical because the nearest lake was a 40-minute drive. I parked behind a row of weedy bushes, scanning the lot. Sure enough, Brian's gray SUV was there. The plan was to confirm the cheating physically catch them red-handed. But something in me balked at the idea of bursting into the room unannounced, maybe seeing them in the act. That might short-circuit my self-control entirely. So I waited. My mind rehashed everything. Sophie's birth, her first steps, how I'd taught her to say Dada. It all felt like a sick joke now. I gripped the steering wheel, nearly shaking. 2 hours later, they emerged, both dressed but disheveled. Brian's hair looked mussed. Lila wore a slight flush in her cheeks. They parted ways by his SUV, a quick hug, a sly smile. She got into her own car, a red sedan we'd bought together, and pulled out. I tailed Brian first, watching him drive to a gas station. He got out to fill up, whistling. I almost confronted him there, but something told me to hold off. I wanted them both in a single strike. Back home at 2 p.m., I connected the phone recorder. Sure enough, I found a conversation from earlier that morning. Lila: "I'll see you at Lakeside. Room 108, right?" Brian: quiet laugh. "Yes, I booked it under Martin Scott. Bring the kit." Lila, sounding excited: "Don't worry, we'll try again if it doesn't happen this time." The kit? Some twisted fertility kit? Or was it just code for condoms or something else? My stomach churned at how casual they sounded. I ejected the memory stick and put it in a small labeled envelope. That's when the next phone call came through. The phone ring startled me. I recognized Betty's cell. I recorded it automatically. "Betty," voice trembling. "Lila, I know where you were. Brian left a receipt on the counter for that damn motel. I'm starting to think you two have gone way beyond the original plan." I told you I was only okay with it for the sake of you having children. But this is something else. Lila, frantic whisper. Betty, it's not what you think. I just needed him again. Evans had test results. I'm scared. We have to conceive again quickly before he suspects. Betty, I'm done, Lila. You're crossing lines. Don't call me for backup. Brian's on his own. The call ended abruptly, so Betty wasn't fully in control of the affair now. She'd consented to some arrangement initially, but it had spiraled beyond her comfort. They'd all lost their moral compasses, except maybe Betty was trying to salvage her own conscience. Around 5 p.m., Lila strolled in, wearing her usual sweet expression. Her hair was damp, probably from a shower at the motel. She said, "Hey, honey, everything good?" Like it was an ordinary day. I almost laughed at how brazenly she tried to look innocent. "Yeah," I replied curtly, "just finishing up some last-minute house stuff." She set her purse down and walked into the kitchen, rummaging for a snack. "Where's Sophie?" "At your sister's." I lied. "I figured you might be busy." She shrugged. "Oh, okay. Good call, I guess." I studied her posture, the subtle tension in her shoulders. She must have suspected my standoffish mood, but didn't question it. Maybe she assumed I was in one of my occasional work-related funks. I forced a casual tone. "Hey, mind if we talk later tonight? I want to go over some finances. Maybe look at the budget." "Sure," she said, looking mildly puzzled. "You never wanted to look at spreadsheets before." I shrugged. Times change. Instead of confronting her in the evening, I decided to wait one more day. I wanted that final call with Brian recorded, in which they might discuss what happened at the motel. Sure enough, Wednesday morning delivered. As soon as I woke up, I replaced the memory stick in the device and listened to Tuesday night's calls. There was a short but damning one. Brian. "So that was good, yeah?" Lila. "Of course. I feel better. I'm sure it'll take. I can't wait to see the test results. Next time we should be more discreet, though. Evan's been odd." Brian. "He's not onto us. Don't worry." They joked about me like I was some clueless schmuck. My jaw ached from grinding my teeth. I'd had enough. Enough lying. Enough behind-me-back jokes. If this was some insane plan to impregnate Lila again and pass the kid off as mine, it wasn't happening. Not a second time. That afternoon, I called my attorney from the office. He confirmed the divorce papers were ready, along with a suit aimed at Brian for paternal responsibility. "You can serve them whenever you want," he said. "I can arrange a process server, or you can hand them over yourself, though that can be volatile." I told him, "I'll handle it. I have some ideas." He cleared his throat. "Evan, I gotta advise caution. If your confrontation escalates, the entire case could be jeopardized." I exhaled. "Understood. I'll be careful." But inside, I burned. I considered telling the attorney the truth, that I wasn't sure I could remain calm if Brian showed his face in front of me. But I said nothing, only quietly thanked him and ended the call. That evening, the moment arrived. Lila came home around 5:30, humming some tune. Sophie was at a neighbor's playing with their kids. Perfect timing. I stood in the living room, arms folded. She glanced at me, eyes flickering with concern. "Evan, you're scaring me. What's up?" I gestured for her to sit on the couch. "We need to talk. Right now." Her face paled slightly. "Okay." I reached into my desk drawer, pulled out the sealed envelope from the clinic. I tossed it onto the coffee table. "Read that." Lila frowned, picked up the envelope, and opened it. As she scanned the lines, her lips trembled. She didn't say a word, just set it down carefully. "That's the DNA test," I said flatly. "It proves Sophie isn't mine. Want to explain?" She swallowed hard, color draining from her cheeks. Then, in a small voice, "Evan, I don't know what—" "Cut the crap," I snapped. "I know about you and Brian." Her eyes went wide, shining with tears. "Brian, you mean, oh God." "I know everything," I said, stepping closer, looming over her. "You've been screwing my best friend for years. You fathered Sophie with him right under my nose. And now you're trying to have a second baby with him." Lila's eyes darted around as though seeking an escape. It wasn't like that. It was never we did it because you couldn't— you had the fertility issue. I wanted a child so badly." I barked a laugh. "So you decided to cheat and pass it off as my kid. Real nice." She reached for my hand, but I jerked away. Tears slipped down her face. I'm sorry. I wanted you to have a child. I never meant to fall into it repeatedly. Brian said it was the only way to keep it secret. Stop talking, I hissed. I've heard enough. Don't you dare put this on me. You and Brian are going to regret every second of this. She opened her mouth to protest, but I stormed off to the garage, slamming the door so hard a shelf rattled. My entire body hummed with adrenaline. The confrontation was far from done. We spent that night in tense silence. Lila tried to approach me in the kitchen, offering halting explanations about fertility, how Betty initially suggested it, how she'd first only planned a one-time arrangement. My mind reeled with images of them at the motel, their explicit phone calls, her voice pleading, it wasn't love, it was just a baby-making arrangement. By midnight, I'd heard enough. Don't come near me, I snapped. We're finished. I locked myself in the spare room. She banged on the door, sobbing, Evan, we can fix this, please. But my heart was stony. At dawn, I left the house and went to see my lawyer. We decided to finalize the documents that day. He told me he'd serve them if I wished. But I said, no, I want to do it myself. There was a cold fury in me that demanded personal closure. By midday, I was a walking pressure cooker. I discovered from one last phone recording that Brian planned to come by our place around 6 p.m. to talk to Lila. Perfect. I armed myself with the divorce papers in a manila envelope, plus the legal claim for child support. He fathered Sophie, so let him pay. By 5:45, I was pacing the living room. Sophie was next door at a friend's house, good. I didn't want her witnessing the meltdown. Lila hovered by the kitchen, trembling, clearly worried about a confrontation. When Brian's SUV rolled up, I watched him step out wearing a casual grin like he was paying a friendly visit. The rage inside me flashed from simmer to boil. He rang the bell once. I yanked the door open, glaring. Hey, Evan, he said uncertainly. Is Lila? Cut the small talk. Get inside. My tone must have shocked him because he stepped in, eyes darting around. Dude, you look... That's all he managed before I shoved the envelope against his chest. You fathered Sophie. You impregnated my wife. And you think I'm some gullible fool? Brian's face went ashen. He glanced at Lila, who stood in the hallway, covering her mouth. Evan, wait. Sign those, I barked, and then we'll talk. He fumbled with the envelope, pulling out the documents, scanning them. What child support? You can't be serious. I stepped forward. Oh, I'm dead serious. You owe me for 4 years of raising your daughter. You owe me for humiliating me. And you're going to pay for every goddamn expense from here on out. He tried to stammer excuses. Something about how it was all Betty's idea, how it was supposed to be a one-off donation. I lunged for him. Lila screamed, No, Evan, please! But it was too late. I'd grabbed his shirt collar. You destroyed my life, I hissed. Now I'm returning the favor. He pushed back, not violently, more like trying to keep distance. Evan, calm down, man. Let's talk. We can figure this out. That's when I snapped. With a guttural growl, I drove my fist into his jaw. He stumbled back, eyes wide. Lila rushed forward to pull me off, but I shoved her aside. Brian tried to duck, but I landed another punch. He crashed into the coat rack, arms flailing. You think I'm an idiot? I roared, grabbing him by the hair. You think you can get my wife pregnant behind my back and I'd just never find out? He whimpered. I'm sorry. But I didn't stop. I was half blinded by fury, adrenaline surging. I hammered a fist into his gut. He doubled over. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a baseball bat leaning in the hallway. Sophie's pink plastic bat? No, the real one I used at a charity softball game. I seized it with a shaking hand. Brian's eyes bulged. Evan, don't... I swung it, striking his forearm as he tried to block. A sickening thud, followed by his scream. The rational part of my brain was gone, replaced by a savage desire to obliterate him. Lila was shrieking, Stop! Oh my God, stop! She lunged at me. I shoved her again, forcibly enough that she hit the wall and slid down, sobbing. Brian was on his knees, trying to crawl toward the door. I swung the bat once more, connecting with his ribs. He coughed, curling into a fetal position. You scumbag, I spat. You fathered Sophie. Think I'll let you do that again? He moaned. Betty left me. I had nowhere to... I battered his thigh. He let out a guttural wail. Lila tried once more to grab my arm, tears streaming down her face. "Evan, enough! You're going to kill him!" Maybe that should have stopped me. Maybe I should have cared. But I was locked in a red haze. I yanked him by the collar and hissed, "I'm going to make sure you never father another child in your life." Then I raised the bat and slammed it into his groin with everything I had. He howled, face contorting in raw agony. Another blow, another. Blood, or maybe piss, soaked his pants. I lost count. The room echoed with frantic screams and my ragged breathing. In the chaos, I heard pounding on the door and muffled shouting. Neighbors, probably alerted by the shrieks and commotion. It was all a blur. Lila's voice cut through the madness. "Help! Someone call 911! Ah!" Brian was lying on the floor, shaking, blood smearing across the tiles. I dropped the bat, panting. My vision swam. The rage that fueled me suddenly drained, replaced by numb shock. God, what have I done? But a sharper, colder part of me insisted he got what he deserved. I bent down, whispered hoarsely, "That's for 4 years of betrayal, you piece of trash." He moaned incoherently, tears mingling with blood. The front door burst open. Our neighbor, a tall man named Paul who'd once borrowed my lawnmower, stood in the threshold, eyes wide at the scene. He whipped out his phone, barking, "Police are on their way." Another neighbor, Linda, peered over his shoulder, covering her mouth in horror. Lila crawled toward Brian, sobbing uncontrollably, wailing, "Oh God, oh God!" She pressed a towel against the blood on his face, and I just stood there, panting, my fists throbbing, knuckles raw. I locked eyes with Paul, who looked at me like I was some savage criminal. Maybe I was. Within minutes, sirens blared. Red and blue lights stained the walls. Officers rushed in, guns drawn, yelling, "Hands up! Drop any weapons!" I raised my hands slowly, my heart hammered. One officer cuffed me and shoved me onto the couch. Another knelt beside Brian, radioing for an ambulance. Lila was hysterical, shouting half-incoherent pleas for them not to shoot me. They didn't shoot, but they definitely arrested me. They read me my rights while half the neighborhood gawked from outside. In a daze, I saw paramedics lift Brian onto a gurney. He was alive, but the amount of blood, the angle of his broken arm, made me realize I might be facing serious charges. The next 48 hours were a blur of interrogation, a holding cell, official statements. I kept quiet, only requesting a phone call to contact my attorney. I gave a minimal statement. Yes, I confronted him. He was sleeping with my wife. I lost control. Beyond that, I refused to elaborate without Keith present. Eventually, I was arraigned on charges of felony assault, possibly attempted murder. The district attorney would decide how far to push it. I saw Lila and Betty in the courtroom's front row. Betty looked pale, her hair disheveled, arms folded tightly. Lila's face was streaked with tears. My eyes flicked away from them, focusing on the judge. Keith entered a plea of not guilty, hinting at temporary insanity. The judge set bail at an amount so high my jaw clenched. Then from the corner of my eye, I saw Lila and Betty whispering, giving brief nods to each other. They slipped out of the courtroom. Keith told me, "We might have an option. They say they'll pay your bail if you meet them in Brian's hospital room to talk." I clenched my teeth. "Talk about what? We're past that." He shrugged. "They claim they'll persuade Brian not to cooperate with prosecutors if you'll just talk and promise not to keep pushing for child support or do anything else that might ruin them financially. It's your call, Evan, but it could save you months behind bars while waiting for trial." I exhaled. The idea of rotting in a cell while Sophie was left in that toxic environment made me sick. "Fine," I muttered. "I'll meet them." They posted bail the next day. I walked out of the county jail in the same clothes I'd worn during the beating, still stained with Brian's dried blood. Keith gave me a ride to my house. The place was empty. Lila had presumably taken Sophie somewhere. I showered, changed into fresh clothes, all in a daze. Then at 5 p.m., we drove to Mercy General Hospital where Brian had been admitted. He was in critical but stable condition. They said broken arm, multiple fractures, severe trauma to his groin that might leave him infertile. I felt a twinge of grim satisfaction at that. We arrived at his private room. The hallway smelled of antiseptic and old coffee. My stomach tightened. I forced myself inside. Lila was there along with Betty. Brian lay in bed, his head swathed in bandages, face bruised and swollen. A nurse had just left, adjusting his IV. The moment I stepped in, silence fell. Lila looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. Betty stood by the window, arms crossed. I stood near the door, refusing to move closer. "You wanted to talk. Let's get this over with." Lila swallowed. "Evan, I'm God. I'm so sorry. I never wanted this to happen. We never intended to hurt you." I sneered. "You impregnated yourself with my friend's sperm behind my back. Then you lied to me for years. Took my money, my love. And you say you didn't want to hurt me? Spare me." Betty stepped forward, her voice trembling with anger. "I suggested the idea of Brian helping you two conceive, but I never meant for it to become an ongoing affair. Lila, you told me it would be a simple arrangement. Brian promised me the same. I can't believe you kept doing it." A tear slipped down her cheek. "You used me to cover your tracks. You told me you would only be with him until you got pregnant. But then it went on and on." Brian made a soft, pained groan. His jaw was wired so he couldn't speak much. I snorted. "I've got recordings that prove it wasn't some one-time deal. You both are disgusting. Now you want me to just hush up so the DA won't have an easy case? Or you want to sign the worthless divorce papers so you all can keep your reputations intact?" Lila wrung her hands. "We'll do anything you want. Drop the suits, avoid pressing charges, everything if you'll just let Brian recover without sending him to prison, too." She choked on a sob, glancing at his battered form. In that moment, I stared at Brian's eyes. He was watching me with a mix of terror and regret. He couldn't talk. Possibly that was a blessing because I'm not sure I could handle hearing more excuses. I stepped closer to his bed, ignoring Lila's trembling. "Listen up, Brian," I said quietly. "You signed the child support agreement. You signed the affidavit acknowledging Sophie is your daughter. You set up a college fund for her. And you swear on your miserable life you'll never come near me or my household again. Do that, and I might keep the cops from piling on additional civil charges." He managed a nod, tears escaping the corners of his eyes. Lila broke into fresh sobs, burying her face in her hands. Betty turned to me with a broken expression. "He's out of my life anyway," she said softly. "I already filed for divorce. I want no part of this. My only regret is that I started that conversation about him helping you. I never thought you'd both betray me too." She shot a hateful look at Lila. I dropped a stack of documents onto the foot of the bed. "If you want me to keep quiet, sign everything. That includes disclaimers that you won't sue me for your injuries. No cooperating with the DA, no testifying. Keith will handle the details. You do that, I walk free, you limp away. Understood?" Brian blinked in what looked like acceptance. He lifted his unbroken arm gingerly and scrawled a shaky signature wherever I pointed. His breathing hitched with each movement, the pain clearly intense. Couldn't say I felt sorry. Lila hovered, wanting to speak. Finally, she whispered, "What about us? Are you going to finalize the divorce?" I stared at her. "I am. It's already done. I have no interest in hearing your sad explanation. I just want you gone from my life." She opened her mouth, then closed it, nodding slowly. Her shoulders sagged, as though a 1,000-pound weight had settled on her. Betty rubbed her arms, tears glistening. "I'll help with Sophie if you want. She loves her cousins. I can babysit if I cut her off. We'll see. For now, I just want to focus on Sophie's well-being. God knows I'm not her biological father, but after 4 years, she thinks I am." Lila spoke up suddenly, voice cracking. "But you are her real father, Evan, emotionally and morally. That's what matters. Blood doesn't. Please don't cut Sophie out of your life. It'll destroy her." At that, my anger reignited. "You think you get a say in how I handle Sophie now? You used me to fund your love child. As far as I'm concerned, Sophie is Brian's responsibility. But maybe I'll talk to her. I can't promise anything." My words made Lila flinch, tears pouring. She sank to the chair next to Brian's bed, face in her hands. I felt no sympathy. With a cold nod, I gathered the signed papers. "Pleasure doing business with you. Keith will finalize the rest. Enjoy your new life, you miserable scum." No one replied as I left the room. I felt numb, like I'd closed a thick steel door on the last decade of my life. The hallway outside was quiet. My reflection in the window showed a man who looked older, harder, eyes ringed with exhaustion. I hardly recognized myself. When Keith stepped up, I handed him the stack. He signed. Keith nodded. All right, we'll push to get charges dropped or reduced as he won't cooperate. This might work, but watch yourself, Evan. The DA might still try to press charges. I'll handle it, I muttered. That night, I retreated to a cheap month-to-month condo near the outskirts of town. I couldn't bear stepping into that house again, not with the memory of Brian's blood on the tiles. Sophie was staying with Betty for the moment. Lila texted me once, pleading to talk, to let her explain. I ignored it. I sat on the condo's worn couch, an untouched beer at my side. I thought about Sophie. She was innocent. My mind repeated. She was the biggest casualty of this twisted fiasco. I thought about telling her the truth, that I wasn't really her dad. But I already had the paternity test. The nurse's phone call replayed in my head. Maybe I'd become a monster, but after the avalanche of betrayal, I felt nothing but emptiness. I swore to myself I'd never be duped again. I wish I could say that first night out on bail gave me some sense of relief, but it didn't. If anything, stepping back into the world as a free man knowing I was one legal twist away from prison felt surreal. I crashed at a modest condo on the outskirts of Mayfield Springs, paying a premium for a month-to-month lease. The furniture was sparse, a gray couch that sagged in the middle, a TV perched on a wobbling stand, and a tiny kitchenette that smelled like stale coffee grounds. I'd told the landlord I needed privacy. She eyed my bandaged knuckles but kept her questions to herself. Sometime after midnight, my phone vibrated. The text read, "Is Sophie safe?" It came from Lila. I stared at the screen, uncertain whether to reply. When I'd parted ways with her, I'd been adamant that I wanted nothing more to do with her. But the question about Sophie, I typed a curt response. She's staying with Betty for now. I'll figure out a permanent solution soon. Then I powered the phone off. I drifted into a fitful sleep, haunted by mental snapshots of the beating I'd delivered to Brian, of Sophie's innocent face when she'd last seen me, and the swirling anger I still harbored toward Lila. A part of me hated how empty I felt without Sophie's laughter echoing around me, but I couldn't just wipe away the betrayal I'd endured. When morning came, I forced down black coffee and scrolled the local news. No mention of my arrest yet. Maybe the cops were keeping it low profile. I dressed, stared at the mirror, saw the bruises and the lines under my eyes. Then I set out to see my attorney. My attorney, Keith Lowry, maintained a small brick office near Mayfield Springs' downtown district, a row of older, two-story buildings with plate glass storefronts. His place was squeezed between a florist and a shoe repair shop. He greeted me with a handshake that was both firm and sympathetic. "Evan," he said, motioning me inside. "Let's talk next steps." The waiting room, which doubled as Keith's main hallway, smelled faintly of lemon cleaner. On the wall hung his military commendations, framing his stern, high-and-tight haircut in the pictures. Now in a crisp suit, he reminded me of a drill sergeant who'd traded camouflage for litigation. We moved to his back office where thick blinds blocked the morning sun. I settled into a leather chair opposite his desk. He perched on the other side, tapping a pen against a legal pad. "I filed the request for a hearing to reduce charges," he said. "Brian, ironically, is refusing to cooperate with prosecutors, which will help. He signed affidavits stating he doesn't want to press charges. The DA might still proceed, but it's weaker without the victim's full testimony." I gave a grim nod. I figured as much. He rifled through a folder. "We also have that child support claim, which Brian signed. Now, if we push that in family court, we have ammunition to show your side of the story, but it might anger him enough to hamper our criminal defense. Are you sure you still want to go for that?" My jaw tightened. "Yes," I said firmly. "He fathered a child with my wife. He should pay, at least to recoup the 4 years I was unknowingly raising his kid. Maybe it sounds petty, but I need that final measure of justice." Keith regarded me steadily. "Understood. However, there's a more pressing matter. Sophie's custody and what you plan to do regarding your divorce from Lila. I know we have the papers ready, but I want to confirm your stance on everything." I let out a ragged breath. "I want the divorce finalized. But Sophie, I'm torn. She's not biologically mine. I don't know if I even want partial custody. Yet she's known me as Dad since she was born. He nodded sympathetically. That's a complicated emotional spot indeed. Technically, you have certain parental rights if you're on her birth certificate, even if you're not the biological father. The question is, do you want to exercise them? I stared at the old Polaroid on Keith's desk, he and his wife, kids in matching pajamas. I honestly don't know. My anger wants me to walk away, but another part of me can't imagine abandoning the kid who thinks I'm her father. My voice cracked, surprising me. I coughed, regaining composure. Lila's the mother. If I fight for custody, it means dealing with her. I'm not sure I can handle that right now. Keith set his pen down, folding his hands. Evan, I've seen men in your position do both. Walk away or fight to maintain a relationship with the child. You're the only one who can decide. I'd just advise you to consider Sophie's best interests, as well as your own emotional well-being. I ground my teeth, feeling the weight of it. I'll think about it. After I left Keith's office, I took a long, aimless drive. The sky was dark with heavy clouds, threatening a summer storm. At a red light, a minivan pulled up beside me, kids' faces pressed to the window, making silly faces. My chest tightened, reminded of Sophie's bright grin. One might imagine me as a stoic, unflinching figure, but the truth was, behind my hardened exterior, I felt gutted. The rage that propelled me through the assault was gone, replaced by a bleak emptiness. The only thing that kept me going was the vow that I would never again be blindsided by betrayal. I decided to check on Sophie. She was at Betty's place, or so I'd heard. Despite my anger at the entire Weber family, I couldn't ignore the pit in my stomach that demanded I see how my little girl was doing. So I drove across town to Betty's. Her house looked identical to ours in design, 2 stories, white siding, a trimmed front lawn. Parked at the curb, I saw a battered sedan I didn't recognize, possibly a friend of Betty's. My heart hammered as I stepped out, debating if I should just ring the doorbell unannounced. Before I could talk myself out of it, I made my way to the porch. The door had a wreath with plastic flowers. I knocked, hearing muffled voices inside. After a moment, the door opened to reveal Betty. She wore yoga pants, a shirt, and an expression of raw exhaustion. She blinked in surprise. Evan? You came here. Are you— I just want to see Sophie, I said tersely, crossing my arms. Betty stepped aside, gesturing me in. She's in the living room, watching cartoons. Look, I'm not sure if Lila told you, but Sophie's been confused, asking about you. I entered warily, noticing that the usual smell of vanilla candles was replaced by a faint odor of disinfectant. Betty led me down the hallway toward the living room. Just be gentle with her, okay? She's been through a lot. My jaw clenched. Yeah, sure. The living room had plush couches, a big TV, children's toys scattered about. Sophie was on the couch, hugging a stuffed giraffe, eyes glued to a cartoon dinosaur show. When she spotted me, she gasped an intake of breath that sounded both thrilled and anxious. She scrambled off the couch, rushed over. "Daddy!" she cried, throwing her arms around my legs. Her hair was in 2 messy pigtails, cheeks flushed with excitement. I froze momentarily. Then instincts kicked in and I knelt, letting her hug me. My throat constricted. "Hey, kiddo," I managed, ruffling her hair. She smelled like strawberry shampoo. She looked up at me with wide eyes. "I missed you. You didn't come home. Mommy said you had to work, but Aunt Betty said I don't know. Everything's weird." I forced a smile, heart sinking. "I've just been busy, yeah. How are you? You doing okay?" She nodded, hugging the giraffe. "I guess. Aunt Betty's nice, but I want to go home. Mommy's been crying a lot. I asked her why, and she just said she's sad. Is she mad at you?" God, the innocent confusion in her voice cut me like a knife. I glanced at Betty, who hovered in the doorway, arms wrapped around herself. I looked back at Sophie. "Me and Mommy, we're trying to figure out some grown-up problems. That's all." Sophie bit her lip. "Are you still my daddy?" The question nearly knocked the air from my lungs. I must have hesitated too long because she tugged on my sleeve, repeating, "You are, right?" I swallowed the bitter lump in my throat. "I'll always care about you," I whispered, deflecting the direct answer. We talked a bit more. She showed me some coloring pages, told me about a game she played with her cousins. I tried to engage, but everything in me felt twisted. Eventually, I spotted another child's face peeking from behind the couch. It was one of Betty's kids, maybe 5 or 6. They stared at me warily, as though they'd overheard the rumors swirling among the adults. After about 20 minutes, I stood to leave. Sophie clung to my hand. "Don't go," she pleaded, tears brimming in her eyes. "Why do you have to go?" Betty intervened gently, kneeling beside Sophie. "Sweetie, Uncle Evan has grown-up stuff to do, but he can come back if he wants, right?" She glanced at me with a guarded look. I forced a nod. "Yes, I'll come back, Sophie." My gaze flicked to Betty. "Thanks for taking care of her." Betty exhaled. "I'm doing my best. Look, Evan, I know I'm part of how this whole mess started, but I never meant for things to— I never wanted to see you or Brian or Lila get hurt like this." I recalled her phone calls, her involvement in orchestrating the initial baby-making, and my anger flared. But looking at Sophie's tear-streaked face, I just gave a stiff nod and walked out. On my way to the car, a man approached from the side yard, dark-haired, mid-30s, wearing a shirt with some landscaping company's logo. He called out, "You must be Evan? I'm Neil, Betty's friend." I frowned. Another new face. "Yeah, that's me." Neil stuffed his hands in his pockets. "I've been helping with the kids. She's had a tough time. The kids are all confused about Brian not living here anymore. Anyway, just wanted to say hi." I offered him a curt nod, suspicious of yet another man in this entangled circle. "Thanks, but I'm on my way out." He stepped aside, letting me pass. "Sure, take care." As I drove away, I mentally cataloged Neil's presence. Another factor in this swirling chaos. Possibly just a good Samaritan or something more. My trust in people had cratered so hard I no longer believed in casual coincidences. That afternoon, I mulled over Sophie's words. "Are you still my daddy?" The simple innocence stung. Despite my desire to cut all ties with Lila, I realized I needed clarity about Sophie. If I walked away, she might interpret it as me abandoning her. If I fought for custody, how would that work if I wasn't biologically related? And if I gained some custody, I'd still have to see Lila periodically. My phone dinged. Another text from Lila. "We need to talk about Sophie's routine. Please, can we meet?" I typed back a single sentence. "I'll let you know when I'm ready." I wasn't ready to face her manipulative tears or get entangled in her excuses again. But the question of Sophie's future hung over me like a dark cloud. That evening, I found myself standing outside the old Carter family home, my dad's place. A small, single story on the far edge of town. He'd passed a couple of years before I met Lila, so he never got to see me marry or become a father figure. The house was still in my name, though I'd rented it out for a while. Now it stood vacant, a battered "for sale" sign leaning crookedly in the lawn. Something compelled me to step inside. I used the spare key hidden under a stone frog in the flower bed. The interior smelled dusty and stale. The living room walls were adorned with old fishing trophies and 70s wood paneling. I remembered my dad teaching me to fix an engine in the driveway, or how he'd grunt, "Trust no one, kid," whenever I mentioned a new friend. A cynical man, but maybe he was onto something. I spent an hour wandering from room to room, lost in memories. On the fridge door was still a faded magnet with my mother's name, Linda, in curly script. She'd died when I was young, leaving me with Dad's stern upbringing. And now here I was, alone again, the old Carter curse of heartbreak. In a box under the kitchen sink, I discovered a small album with photos. One of me at about 6, proudly holding up a model airplane. My father behind me, a reluctant half-smile on his face. Another of me in high school wearing a cheap suit for prom. I'd gone with a neighborhood girl, no big romance. My father had scribbled "graduation soon" on the back. I closed the album, my throat tight. This old place wasn't a home anymore, just a time capsule. But standing there gave me a fleeting clarity. I can't let Sophie feel abandoned. Despite the lies, the anger, the swirling mess, some paternal part of me refused to sever that bond. I exhaled, deciding that if I was to remain in her life, I needed to do it on my terms, not under Lila's manipulative roof. The next morning, I called my attorney. "Keith, I've made a decision. I want to keep partial custody of Sophie." He sounded relieved. "I think that's wise. The courts generally see continuity in a child's life as beneficial, especially since you've been her de facto father. We'll push for joint custody, though you're not the biological father. That's a unique situation, but I've seen judges rule in favor of stability." I nodded even though he couldn't see me. "Yeah, let's do that." He paused. "This also means we might have to handle child support from your end, ironically, if the court still recognizes you as her legal father. Meanwhile, we're demanding paternal recognition from Brian. It's messy, but it can be done. We'll need a separate hearing to argue the child's best interests." I sighed. "All right, just proceed. We'll cross that bridge." Hence, I stepped onto a path that guaranteed I'd have to speak to Lila soon, face to face, about co-parenting. The thought made my blood simmer, but I told myself, for Sophie's sake, do it. A couple of days later, I got a summons. The district attorney was still contemplating the assault charges. They wanted me to appear in a preliminary hearing to confirm whether the case would go to trial. Even though Brian had withdrawn cooperation, the state sometimes pushed violent assault charges on principle. My stomach twisted at the prospect of prison time. Could I end up behind bars while Sophie drifted away from me? One late afternoon, I left the condo and headed to a small gym on the outskirts of downtown. I needed an outlet for my pent-up rage. The place was gritty, with cracked mirrors and an old ring in the corner for boxing or MMA training. A buddy of mine from college, Tony, worked there as a trainer, though we hadn't kept in close touch. He recognized me, gave me a concerned once-over, but didn't pry. I spent a furious hour punching a heavy bag, sweat pouring, knuckles aching through the gloves. Each hit felt like a fraction of the tension leaving my body. In my mind, I imagined Brian's face, or the mocking voices that said I'd never father a child. I hammered that bag until my arms shook. Tony eventually pulled me aside, handing me water. "Hey man, you're going at it like you've got a death wish," he said, eyeing my posture. "Something up?" I just shook my head. "Needed to blow off steam." He gave a half laugh. "Well, if you ever need to talk or just keep working out, you know where to find me. We open at 6 a.m., close at 9 p.m. I nodded. "Thanks." As I drove back to the condo, a small sliver of calm replaced the swirling dread. At least I had an outlet, somewhere to channel the rage. The next major hurdle arrived in the form of a scheduled meeting with Lila, a co-parenting discussion at Keith's suggestion. I dreaded it, but I recognized the necessity. I told her via text to meet me at a neutral location, a diner on Willow Street, known for its back booths where folks could talk quietly. She agreed, sending back a simple, "Okay, 3 p.m. tomorrow." When I walked into that diner, the smell of burnt coffee and frying bacon greeted me. It was the tail end of the lunch rush, so only a few patrons lingered, two older women sharing pie, a man hunched over a newspaper, a couple of teens giggling in a corner booth. Lila sat alone in a booth near the back, fiddling with her napkin. She looked different, thinner, eyes sunken from what might have been tears or lack of sleep. Dressed in a worn cardigan, hair pulled back in a haphazard bun. Still, a flicker of anger rose in me at the sight of her. "You lied for 4 years about Sophie." I slid into the booth across from her. We didn't speak right away. The waitress came by. I ordered a black coffee. Lila asked for water. Silence stretched a moment. Finally, Lila cleared her throat. "Thanks for meeting with me. How are you?" I eyed her. "Why the small talk?" She flinched. "I'm sorry, I need to talk about Sophie. She misses you. She keeps asking why you're gone. I don't know how to handle this." Her voice quivered. I inhaled sharply. "Sophie's the only reason I'm here. You and I have nothing else to discuss except the divorce, which is happening." Tears welled in Lila's eyes. She dabbed at them with the napkin. "I know. I accept that. I just never imagined it would end like this. We had a good life. I never wanted to lose you." I clenched my jaw, resisting the urge to lash out. "You cheated. You conspired with my best friend. You fathered a child behind my back. Don't act like this is some tragedy that happened to you." She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. I know. It's all on me, and Brian, and Betty, to some degree. But I swear, it started as a desperate attempt to conceive. Then I got caught up in it." "That's not an excuse," I growled. She looked away, swallowing. Then she mustered what little composure she had. You said you want to remain in Sophie's life. I want that too. She loves you, Evan. Biology aside, you're her dad. I've told her that you're not going anywhere. Don't promise things for me, I snapped. I'll make my own decisions, but yes, I'm seeking partial custody. Keith will handle the legal details. We can arrange schedules or we can let the court decide. Her face crumpled. I'll agree to any schedule you want. I just want Sophie to be happy. If you want sole custody, you can have it. I'm in no condition to fight right now. That offer stunned me. Sole custody? Are you serious? She nodded miserably. Brian's gone. Betty's furious. My parents, well, Dad wants nothing to do with me. Mom is half siding with him. I have no stable environment except maybe Betty's help. But she hates me too. I know I don't deserve pity, but I'm telling you, if you want to take Sophie, maybe I can see her on weekends. I exhaled. Jesus, Lila, I didn't expect you to roll over so easily. What's your angle? She pressed her lips together. No angle. I'm just undone. The guilt is killing me. If letting you raise Sophie full-time would bring her stability and maybe earn your forgiveness. A bitter laugh escaped me. Don't hold your breath for forgiveness. She closed her eyes. I know, but I'm serious about Sophie. I don't want her dragged through legal battles. If you want full custody, I'll sign. I only ask for visitation. I stared at my coffee, swirling it. My mind reeled, so she was ready to relinquish her daily role as mother, or at least she was offering that. Did I want that? Did I want to become Sophie's sole guardian, picking up and dropping off at school, dealing with all the day-to-day parenting tasks, while forging a life overshadowed by the knowledge she wasn't mine? Could I handle it? After a moment, I said, we'll see. For now, let's do a transitional arrangement. I get her every other week. You keep her the other times. If we see that she's better off with me, we'll finalize a sole custody arrangement. Does that work? Lila nodded weakly, tears slipping again. Yes, that works. I sipped my coffee, bitterness flooding my taste buds. The waitress dropped off the check. Lila toyed with her napkin, eyes distant. I'm so sorry, Evan, she whispered, about everything. Sorry doesn't fix it, I said bluntly, placing money on the table. But do right by Sophie, and we'll manage. With that, I stood and left, leaving her hunched over the table. The storm of emotions inside me churned. Guilt, anger, faint relief like I'd taken a step forward, though it was on a path strewn with broken glass. Our new arrangement began the following week. Sophie would stay with me in the condo from Sunday evening until Thursday morning, then go back to Lila's or Betty's from Thursday afternoon through Sunday. It was an odd schedule, but it allowed me to maintain some semblance of work routine at Rocketdyne, assuming they didn't fire me for the legal fiasco, while letting Sophie keep a partial connection with her mother. The first Sunday I brought Sophie over, she was excited but also anxious. She clutched a small backpack stuffed with pajamas, a toothbrush with a cartoon princess handle, and a stuffed giraffe. I tried to act upbeat, telling her, "We'll have fun, kiddo. I'll make pizza, and we can watch that mermaid movie you like." She gave me a shy smile and nodded, but as we stepped into the condo's drab living room, her face fell. "Where's my old bedroom?" she asked softly. My heart twisted. "We're not at the house right now, sweetie. This is a new place for me. So we'll make do, okay?" I'd set up a small corner of the bedroom with an air mattress for her, piles of pillows, some fresh pink sheets. Not exactly a dream bedroom, but best I could do on short notice. She peered at it, then looked at me uncertainly. "Okay, Daddy." She paused, then whispered, "I miss the old house." I forced a smile. "I know. Maybe one day." I trailed off, lacking a firm plan. The old house felt tainted by betrayal, yet for Sophie it was home. I ordered pizza. We sat on the couch, half watching an animated mermaid flick. She grew sleepy halfway through, curling against my side. I felt an overwhelming tenderness as I tucked her hair behind her ear, hearing her soft breathing. My daughter or not? My heart insisted she was mine in every way that mattered. Later, I settled her into the makeshift bed, read her a short story. She clung to my hand, asking if I was going away. I assured her I was just in the next room. Eventually, she dozed off, leaving me to nurse my swirling thoughts in the dark living room. On Monday morning, I drove her to pre-K. The teachers eyed me with curiosity, possibly having heard rumors about the big scandal. One teacher, Miss Faraday, greeted Sophie with a forced smile, then pulled me aside. "Is everything okay at home?" she whispered. "Sophie's been quieter lately, and she said something about you not living in the same house." I took a breath. "We're going through a separation. It's complicated, but I'm trying to keep her routine stable." Miss Faraday nodded sympathetically. "I understand. Let's keep an eye on her emotional well-being, make sure she's handling it as best she can." I left feeling a mixture of gratitude and shame. My entire personal life was basically an open secret. Back at Rocketdyne, I found an HR note on my desk. "Please see me." Signed by my direct manager, Lorna Sharp. Great. Probably not good. I went to her office, a cramped space with filing cabinets jammed against the walls. She gestured for me to sit. "Evan, how are you holding up?" I swallowed. "I'm all right." She nodded, pursing her lips. "We're aware you have some legal troubles. Assault charges, potentially. I'm not asking for details, but the company has concerns about liability. We also want to ensure we're providing any needed support." I rubbed the back of my neck. "I understand. I'm hoping the charges get dropped. The situation is complicated." Lorna gave me a thin smile. "Yes, well, the board is discussing if a temporary suspension might be necessary, but I spoke up for you, given your excellent record. They're willing to keep you on for now, as long as you can maintain focus on your tasks." Relief fluttered in my chest. "I appreciate that." She leaned forward. "Evan, I've known you for a few years, and I'm sorry you're going through personal turmoil. Just keep your head down at work and deliver on your deadlines. Let's keep this drama outside these walls." "Understood?" I nodded. "Yes, ma'am." The rest of the day, I poured myself into the servo design project, forcing my brain to concentrate on mechanical specs rather than legal battles. It felt strangely good to lose myself in engineering details, if only temporarily. That evening, after picking Sophie up from daycare, I found a note slipped under my condo door. My heart lurched, but it was just from the landlord reminding me rent was due next week. "Relax, Carter." Still, I hated the transitory nature of this condo, barely enough space for us, no yard for Sophie, and definitely no sense of home. I tried to distract her by cooking a decent dinner. My cooking skills were limited, so we ended up with spaghetti from a jar and a side of frozen garlic bread. Sophie giggled as I burned one slice, telling me it looked like a black, crunchy boomerang. We ate on mismatched plates at the small table. She told me about a friend at pre-K who had a pet turtle, asked if we could get one. I told her maybe, half smiling at her easy childhood wonder. After bedtime, I realized we were out of milk. So I left her asleep while I dashed down to the 24-hour convenience store on the corner. It was only a 2-minute walk, and I locked the condo carefully. My father's old rule about never leaving a child alone kept ringing in my head, but Sophie was asleep, the door locked. I'd be gone maybe 6 minutes total. However, on my way back, groceries in hand, I spotted a figure lurking near the condo's parking lot, a tall man in a hooded sweatshirt. My pulse quickened. Was that Brian, or some stranger? He had the same height as Brian, but maybe leaner. Then I realized it was Neil, the guy I'd seen at Betty's place. As I approached, he gave a start, stuffing his hands in his pockets. "Oh, hey, Evan." I scowled, stepping closer. "What are you doing here?" He glanced at my building. "I was just picking something up from a buddy who lives here. Didn't realize you were living in this complex." His tone seemed off. I scrutinized him, noticing tension in his posture. "Right," I muttered. "Small world." He forced a grin. "Betty mentioned you might be staying around here. I guess I was curious if you were adjusting." I didn't buy that explanation. "Look," I said, shifting the grocery bag in my arms, "I don't need a spy or a neighborly check-in. I'm fine." Neil raised his palms defensively. "All right, sorry if I intruded. Just wanted to say hi. I'll get going." He strode off toward a beat-up Corolla parked by the curb. I watched him drive away, mind racing. Why is he so interested in my whereabouts? Another piece of this puzzle? Or just an acquaintance of Betty's trying to be polite? My paranoia spiked, but I shook it off, returning to the condo to check on Sophie. Tuesday morning, I woke to Sophie crawling into my bed at dawn. She snuggled up, whispering that she had a bad dream. I wrapped an arm around her, murmuring reassurances. She promptly fell back asleep, leaving me wide awake, heart heavy. This was both comforting her trust in me and heartbreaking because I knew how fragile our arrangement was. Later that day, as I was reviewing an engineering blueprint, my phone buzzed. A call from a number I didn't recognize. I debated ignoring, but curiosity won. "Hello?" A raspy male voice replied, "Hey, Carter. This is Detective Carson from the Mayfield Springs PD. Mind if I ask you a few follow-up questions about the Brian incident?" My stomach flipped. "Detective? Great. I have an attorney, sir. I'd prefer you talk to him." Carson let out a dry chuckle. "Sure, we can do that. Just wanted to see if you had anything else to add or if you'd be willing to come in voluntarily. The DA's reviewing evidence. If Brian's not testifying, we want a statement from you." I pinched the bridge of my nose. "I'll pass." "Talk to my lawyer," he sighed. "All right. Let's hope we can wrap this up soon. Have a nice day." He hung up. I stared at the phone, feeling a wave of anxiety. The police might still push for charges. I couldn't blame them, given the brutal nature of the attack. But hopefully Brian's refusal to cooperate would stall them enough for the case to fizzle. God, let it fizzle. That afternoon, I texted Keith about the detective's call. He replied, "Don't speak to them. I'll handle it. Simple enough." I turned my attention back to daily life, or tried to. When Wednesday rolled around, I faced the reality that I had to hand Sophie back to Lila on Thursday. The thought of letting her go, even for a few days, already twisted my gut. But I needed to follow our agreement, see how it played out. Wednesday night, Sophie grew clingy. We watched a kids' show, but she kept glancing at me. "Daddy, can I stay here forever?" she asked suddenly, wide-eyed. My chest tightened. "Why do you ask?" She fiddled with the giraffe plush. "Because Mommy's always crying. She tries to hide it, but I see. She and Aunt Betty argue about something. I just feel safe here." "Safe in a cramped condo with me?" The irony stung. I stroked her hair. "We'll see, honey. Mommy loves you, though. She's just sad right now." Sophie looked unconvinced. "She says she loves me, but she's always talking to Aunt Betty in hushed voices. I miss our old house, but you're not there. I wish we were all together again." I forced a steady tone. "Things change, Sophie. I'm sorry. But no matter what, I'm here for you." She nodded, resting her head on my shoulder. "Okay, Daddy." We sat like that for a long while. I realized I was comforting the little girl who'd been yanked into a broken adult world. Damn you, Lila and Brian, for forcing this on her, I thought bitterly. Thursday morning, I drove Sophie to preschool. We parted with a hug, her arms latched onto me. Then I left, dreading the evening when Lila was supposed to pick her up from daycare. Midday, I got a text from Lila. "I can pick her up at 3. Where do you want to meet?" I told her, "Meet at the daycare. I'll let them know." So it was done. I had to trust that Lila would handle it responsibly. I tried to bury myself in work, but a gnawing worry persisted. Come 2:30, I stepped away from my desk, unable to focus. Something compelled me to drive over to the daycare, just to ensure the handoff went smoothly. I arrived just as Lila's sedan pulled up. She looked startled seeing me in the parking lot. "Oh, hey, I thought you wanted me to do this alone," she said, stepping out. I shrugged, trying not to snap. "I just want to say goodbye to Sophie." Inside, we found Sophie coloring at a table. When she spotted us together, she gave a hesitant smile. Are we going home, Daddy?" I shook my head gently, exchanging a look with Lila. "You'll be with Mommy for a few days, okay?" Her lip quivered. But... She glanced between us, tears forming. Lila knelt, hugging her. "I've missed you, baby. We'll do something fun. Maybe go to the park." Sophie sniffled, reluctantly letting Lila guide her out the door. She looked back at me, confused. I forced a wave, my stomach twisting. This is better than a public meltdown. In the parking lot, I watched Lila buckle Sophie into her car seat. Sophie stared at me through the window, eyes pleading. Then the car pulled away. I stood there for a solid minute, battling the urge to chase after them, bring Sophie back. But I told myself, we agreed. She's still Lila's daughter in the eyes of the law, and I need to see if she can handle it. I exhaled a shaky breath and drove off. That night, the condo felt emptier than ever. I paced, messing around with unwashed dishes, flipping aimlessly through TV channels. Around 9 p.m., my phone lit up with a call from an unknown number again. Another detective? A telemarketer? I answered with a weary, "Hello?" A woman's voice replied, "Is this Evan Carter?" "Yes," I said warily. "This is Dr. Patrice Harwood. I'm a child psychologist. Lila gave me your number, said you're Sophie's father. She wants to set up some counseling sessions for Sophie to help her cope with the recent changes." I paused, surprised. "Oh, I see. She didn't mention that to me." Dr. Harwood sighed softly. "Yes, she told me it was a last-minute thought, but I agree it might be beneficial. Sophie's been exhibiting some anxiety and confusion from what Lila described. Would you be willing to bring Sophie in for a session next week?" I frowned, torn between annoyance at Lila for going behind my back and relief that someone was addressing Sophie's emotional health. "I think therapy could help," I admitted, "but I'd like to be involved in scheduling. Let me check my calendar." We arranged a tentative appointment for next Wednesday at 4 p.m. Dr. Harwood gave me the address of her practice, a modest place near downtown. I thanked her, hung up. Then I texted Lila, "So you're setting therapy for Sophie? Next time, consult me first." She replied, "I'm sorry. I should have told you. I just want her to get help." I didn't respond. That weekend, I tried to stay busy, spent a few hours at the gym, did laundry, half-heartedly browsed online listings for a bigger rental. Everywhere felt either too expensive or too rundown. I began to wonder if I should just reclaim my father's old house, renovate it, let Sophie have a real yard. But that place held painful memories too, damned if I do, damned if I don't. On Sunday afternoon, I was supposed to pick Sophie up for my 5-day block. I got to Lila's new apartment complex around 3 p.m. She'd moved out of the old house that was in my name. The building was a generic 3-story, brown brick, worn linoleum floors in the lobby. I knocked on her door. She opened it, looking frazzled. "Oh, hi, Sophie's almost ready," she said, stepping aside. The place smelled faintly of musty carpet and leftover pasta sauce. Cardboard boxes lined the walls, half unpacked. I saw a rummage of kids' toys in the living area. Sophie emerged from a bedroom wearing bright pink leggings and a mismatched shirt. She squealed, "Daddy!" and rushed over, hugging my legs. My tension eased a fraction. "Hey, kiddo, ready to go?" She nodded eagerly. "Great." I glanced at Lila. She wore that anxious look again. "Is everything okay?" I asked stiffly, noticing she had a bruise on her forearm. She tried to hide it, shifting her sleeve. "It's nothing, I bumped into the door." I narrowed my eyes. "You sure? That looks like a grab mark." Her cheeks flushed and she quickly changed the subject, kneeling to help Sophie with her shoes. "Be good for Daddy, sweet girl," she murmured. "I'll see you soon." My protective instincts flared, but I held my tongue. Not my circus anymore. If she had a new man who was rough with her, that was her problem. Unless it bled over to Sophie. We left, me carrying Sophie's backpack. Once in my car, Sophie babbled about some cartoon she'd watched. I tried to push aside the image of that bruise, telling myself to focus on the child's well-being. That evening, back at the condo, the routine felt oddly comforting again. Pizza, silly cartoons, bath time in the cramped bathroom. Sophie seemed calmer, though she mentioned missing her old big bathtub. She told me about how Mommy's new place was small, how Aunt Betty visited sometimes. She also complained that Mommy yells on the phone a lot. As I tucked her into bed, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Hello, Evan, I need to talk to you about something urgent. It's Brian." My pulse kicked up. "Brian?" I typed back, "Who is this?" He responded, "I borrowed a phone. My jaw is still wired. I can't speak well but can text. We need to talk." A swirl of conflicting emotions coursed through me: hatred, guilt, curiosity. "Later," I typed, then switched the phone to silent. I wasn't ready to face him yet. Turning back to Sophie, I stroked her hair until she drifted off. As I watched her breathe softly, I realized just how complicated life had become. This sweet child, my anchor in a sea of betrayal. I vowed that whatever storms lay ahead, be it Brian's demands, legal threats, or more secrets, I would ensure Sophie felt safe. even if that meant confronting every ghost from my past. I didn't respond to Brian's texts for 2 days. Part of me was content to let him stew. By now, he'd probably healed enough to type at length, but I owed him nothing. However, on the 3rd day, a wave of curiosity nudged me to open the conversation. The text chain read, "Brian, from borrowed phone. Evan, please. I need to talk. Not about revenge. I'm hurting, physically and mentally. I messed up. But I have info you should know about Sophie, about what Betty told me. Please hear me out." That cryptic mention of info about Sophie piqued my interest. What does he mean? Another layer of lies. I gritted my teeth and typed back, "What info?" His reply was almost immediate. "Not here. Meet me at Lakeside Rehab Center. I was transferred for recovery and therapy. I can sign you in as a visitor if you come tomorrow at 6 p.m. I promise I'm not setting you up. I physically can't do anything. Just come, please." I stared at the phone, anger and intrigue warring inside me. Lakeside was a short-term rehab facility for patients recovering from serious injuries. The idea of seeing Brian in a hospital bed again was complicated, but if he had something crucial to share, I needed to know, especially if it concerned Sophie. The next day, I juggled work tasks and picking Sophie up from pre-K. She was scheduled to stay with me, so I arranged for a babysitter in the evening, my neighbor from the condo, a single mom named Karen who was reliable enough. I told Sophie I had to run an errand for a couple of hours. She pouted but relented when I offered to bring ice cream back. At 5:30 p.m., I drove to Lakeside, tension coiling in my gut. The building was a low-slung structure near a small man-made pond. I parked, walked through automatic doors, and approached the reception desk. A bored-looking nurse asked, "Visiting?" "Yes, Brian Mitchell." She scanned a list, nodded. "He's in room 214. Sign here and follow the corridor to the left." I signed the visitor log, heart thumping. "Remember, he's the betrayer. Keep your guard up." Room 214 had a partially open door. I knocked, then pushed it wide. The room was plain, medical equipment humming softly. Brian lay on the bed, angled upright, wearing sweatpants and a loose shirt. His face was still bruised, jaw clearly supported by some kind of wiring or bracing. A wheelchair sat beside the bed. He looked up, and fear flickered in his eyes. "You came," he mumbled through his jaw constraints, voice distorted. I stepped in, arms folded. "You said you had info. Talk." He gestured weakly to a chair. "Sit, please. Sorry if I talk slow." Indeed, he spoke in halting, strained words. "How's Sophie?" My anger flashed. "How dare you ask about her? After everything you did." He closed his eyes, pained. "I know I hurt you. Hurt everyone. I'm sorry. But I want to do something right. That's why I asked you here." I didn't sit, but I eased my stance. "Spit it out." He swallowed, wincing at the movement. "Betty told me something, before she kicked me out. She found out from a doctor's slip. Something about Sophie's actual paternity might not be mine." That statement felt like a punch to my gut. "What?" I snapped. "Don't spew nonsense. We have a DNA test that says Sophie isn't mine, she must be yours." Brian shook his head slightly. "Betty told me that Lila was with someone else too, a man named Marcus. She was desperate to conceive. She tried multiple angles." His voice trembled. "Could be me or him or you, though you said your count was low, but not impossible." My mind reeled. Marcus? That name popped up once in Lila's phone logs. I scowled. "You expect me to believe Lila also slept with this Marcus guy?" He coughed, wincing. "Betty said she confronted Lila, found suspicious receipts. Lila admitted to seeing Marcus. Some friend of our friend who donated, but then it turned physical." He grimaced. "I only found out days before you attacked me." He pointed to a folder on the bedside table. "I have some old text transcripts from Betty's phone. She gave them to me, said maybe you should see them." I hesitated, then snatched the folder. Inside were printed screenshots of text conversations, Betty's phone apparently backing up. They were partially out of context, but I read, "Lila, to Betty. Marcus wants me to come by again. He says timing is key. I hate this, but I'm so close to conceiving I can feel it." Betty, "Stop, sis. I only suggested Brian because at least we trust him. Who the hell is Marcus?" Another snippet, "Lila, to Betty. I did the ovulation math. Brian's traveling next week. I need more tries. I can't let Evan find out. Just cover for me, okay?" My blood ran cold. So she was with Brian and Marcus? Brian nodded painfully. Looks like it. I swear I didn't know about Marcus until too late. I read further. Lila, to Betty. So I tried with Marcus, but I'm not sure. He's good, but I prefer Brian. This is insane, I know. Evan can never suspect. Betty, you're playing with fire, Lil. Enough is enough. My heart hammered. This was beyond twisted. It indicated that Lila had multiple secret attempts. Could Sophie be this Marcus's child? That made my stomach churn. I slammed the folder shut, glaring at Brian. He coughed. See, I might not be father either. I don't know. She told me after Sophie was born that it was definitely me. But that might be a lie. Betty said the only sure way is a paternity test, specifically with me or with that Marcus guy. But no one knows where Marcus is now. I pinched the bridge of my nose. Christ, Brian, why tell me this? He exhaled shakily. Because I can't fix the past. But if Sophie's not even mine, maybe you would want to know. If she's not yours, not mine, then who does that leave? If it was Marcus, then the entire situation is even more messed up. You deserve the truth. I stared at him, fury and a strange gratitude mingling. How do I even find this Marcus? He shook his head. No clue. Betty said he vanished, some traveling contractor or something. But maybe Lila knows. I stormed to the door, adrenaline surging. You better not be jerking me around. If this is some twisted ploy... Brian lifted a trembling hand, fear in his eyes. No ploy, I swear. I'm done lying. I just want to rebuild what little life I have left. If you can confirm Sophie's father, maybe you'll find closure. I glowered at him. Closure, right. Then I turned and left, folder clutched in my fist. By the time I got home, my mind was on fire. I paid Karen, who said Sophie was asleep. No trouble. Once alone, I pored over those text printouts. They were incomplete, but enough to indicate that while I was busting my tail at Rocketdyne, Lila was pulling out all stops to conceive sleeping with Brian, hooking up with some unknown Marcus, possibly others. Rage boiled. What if Sophie was fathered by a total stranger? But then I recalled the DNA test I had done, which showed Sophie wasn't mine. If she wasn't Brian's either, that meant I sank onto the couch, feeling sick. Sophie might have zero paternal connection to either me or Brian. She was still, at heart, my little girl, but the web of lies deepened. Damn you, Lila. Part of me wanted to confront her immediately. Another part said, wait, she might lie again. Gather evidence, ask calmly, then decide. Morning arrived with Sophie's gentle voice. Daddy, I'm hungry. Do we have cereal? She was in pajamas, hair mussed from sleep. I forced a semblance of normalcy. Sure, kiddo. We did a quick breakfast of cereal and fruit. She chattered about her dream of riding a flying horse. I tried to act normal, but inside I was wrestling with the monstrous revelation. That afternoon, while Sophie was at pre-K, I called Lila. She answered on the third ring. Evan? She sounded wary. Yeah, we need to talk, in person. A pause. Okay, when? Tonight, my condo, after Sophie's bedtime, 8:30. She hesitated. All right. I hung up, not offering more details. At 8:15, I tucked Sophie in, read her a story about a goofy raccoon. My voice must have trembled because she asked if I was okay. I'm fine, just a headache, I lied. She kissed my cheek and drifted off, oblivious to the storm about to hit. Right on cue, at 8:30, a soft knock sounded on the condo door. I opened it to find Lila wearing a loose sweater, hair braided. She looked anxious, glancing around the dim corridor. Can I come in? I stepped aside, arms crossed. Quiet. Sophie's sleeping. She nodded, entering the living room. I gestured to the couch. She sat tentatively, smoothing her sweater. I remained standing, trying to keep my voice low. I talked to Brian, saw some texts. Her eyes flicked up, alarmed. What texts? I tossed the folder onto the coffee table. Don't play dumb. The ones you sent Betty about hooking up with a guy named Marcus. My tone dripped with accusation. So it wasn't just Brian, was it? She paled, breathing quickening. Evan, Cut the crap, I snapped in a harsh whisper. I read them. You told Betty you were meeting him for a baby-making attempt, and that you preferred Brian, but you also used Marcus. So how many men did you use to conceive Sophie? Tears welled in her eyes, voice trembling. I was desperate, Evan. You don't understand how hopeless I felt each month. I was terrified we'd never have a baby. Brian was the primary option, but he wasn't always available. Betty suggested alternatives, some known donors. I found Marcus through a friend of a friend. It was only 1 or 2 times I was losing my mind. She buried her face in her hands. I'm so sorry. I know it's insane. I pressed my palms to my temples, fighting the urge to scream. So you're telling me Sophie might not even be Brian's? She could be Marcus's? Lila nodded miserably, tears streaking her cheeks. Yes, there's a chance. But at the time, I was so certain it was Brian. I never told him about Marcus until after Sophie was born. Then I lied to him, said she was definitely his. She let out a ragged sob. I just wanted a baby. I never thought about how huge a betrayal it was, or how it would blow up. I was selfish, and I destroyed everything. I gritted my teeth. Yeah, you did. So all your talk about wanting Brian to father your child was just half the story. She nodded, trembling. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. A wave of exhaustion hit me. When were you going to tell me about this? After I found the pregnancy test? Or never? She shook her head. I don't know. I never planned for it to come out like this. I hated lying, but each day that passed, it got harder to confess. Then you found out about Brian. I was too wrapped up in that fiasco to mention Marcus. I exhaled, trying to keep my voice down. Sophie slept just beyond the thin wall. So is there any chance Sophie's mine? I demanded. Don't give me false hope, but we did have a few times where you practically jumped me after you saw Brian, right? That might have been your attempt to cover all bases. She hesitated, tears shining in her eyes. We had that night, you remember. It was so intense, but your sperm count was so low, I never thought it would happen. She looked away. I suppose there's a tiny chance, but realistically it's either Brian or Marcus. I sank onto a chair, head in my hands. My chest felt like a vice was crushing it. God, Lila, you turned our marriage into a breeding ground for lies, a literal breeding ground. She sobbed softly. I know, please believe me, I never intended to hurt you. I was blinded by the obsession to have a child. I loved you so much, I just wanted us to have a family. I let out a bitter laugh. Loved me so much you slept with 2 other guys behind my back. Great logic. She reached out a trembling hand, but I recoiled. She withdrew, tears streaming. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want to be honest now. If you want to do another paternity test, specifically comparing Sophie's DNA to Brian's, or if you can find Marcus, maybe you can get clarity. I spat out. I don't care whose genes are in her. She's my daughter in every way that matters. I just hate that I've been strung along by your web of deceit. She nodded, tears dripping onto her sweater. I understand. I inhaled, forcing my tone to remain low. So what happens now? You're giving me free rein to raise Sophie. Are you still planning to be in her life, or are you checking out? Lila shook her head vehemently. I'm not checking out, but I said I'd respect any choice you make. If you want full custody, I'll sign. But I love her. She's all I have left. She sniffled, wiping her eyes. I want to be her mother, even if I failed at being your wife. I stared at her, hating how pitiful she looked. Fine. We'll keep the arrangement for now. But don't expect me to trust anything you say. She nodded, hands twisting in her lap. I know. I'll do whatever you ask, as long as I can see Sophie. A tense silence fell. Finally, I stood, gesturing to the door. You should go. I'm tired, and Sophie's sleeping. She rose unsteadily. Thank you for letting me explain, even if it hurts. I'll call you about Sophie's next therapy session. I nodded stiffly. She stepped toward the door, turned back once, her voice trembling. Evan, for what it's worth, I truly am sorry. Then she was gone, leaving me with the nauseating knowledge that Sophie's real father might be some elusive stranger named Marcus. I rubbed my eyes, overwhelmed. But one truth rose above the chaos. Sophie was mine to protect, biologically or not, and I'd tear down anyone who tried to take her away from me again. The revelation that Sophie might not be Brian's but Marcus's changed nothing about how I felt toward her, yet it shifted the entire dynamic of the legal process. My attorney, Keith, nearly dropped his pen when I told him. We sat in his office again, the musty smell of old files lingering in the air. He frowned deeply. So, there's a potential third father? This complicates the child support claim against Brian. I exhaled. I don't care about the money that much. I just want Brian to pay back what he stole from me in fatherhood. If it turns out he's not Sophie's father either, then, well, maybe I'll drop that specific claim. Keith tapped his desk. I see. But you do realize if Marcus surfaces, he might have paternal rights. He could challenge your custody if he wants. The thought made my stomach twist. What if some random drifter suddenly claimed my Sophie? I ground my teeth. Then I'll fight him. No way a complete stranger is stepping in now. Keith nodded. I understand. But from a purely legal standpoint, he could. It'd be a messy battle, especially if it gets traction in family court. I rubbed my temples. I need to find out who he is. Maybe gauge if he's still around. If he's out of the picture, that's that. I'll let sleeping dogs lie. But if he tries to show up, I'll bury him. Keith jotted notes. All right. Meanwhile, how's the assault case? I sighed. The detective called. They still might push for charges. Brian's non-cooperation is helping me, but nothing's certain. I suppose the DA's waiting to see if the case has enough evidence. He gave a tight smile. We'll keep pressuring. If the victim refuses to testify, the state's case is weaker. With luck, you'll get it dropped or get a minor plea. I nodded, my chest heavy. Let's hope. Over the next week, I balanced single father duties, my job at Rocketdyne, and an increasingly complex emotional landscape. Sophie's therapy session approached. Lila and I decided we'd both attend, though not in the session at the same time, just to coordinate with the therapist, Dr. Harwood. So on Wednesday at 4 p.m., I arrived at the small office building. It was a converted Victorian house with a sign reading Harwood Family Counseling. I parked behind Lila's sedan. Inside, the waiting room was warm, pastel walls, child-friendly posters about feelings. Lila sat on a couch, Sophie beside her, flipping through a picture book. Sophie looked up, a grin lighting her face. Daddy! She hopped off the couch to hug me. I kissed her forehead, ignoring the pang of seeing Lila watching us with sorrowful eyes. A moment later, a petite woman with curly hair, Dr. Harwood, emerged from a side office. She smiled warmly. You must be Evan. I'm Patrice Harwood. Great to meet you in person. I shook her hand. Likewise. Dr. Harwood guided us to a room with toys, beanbag chairs, a child-sized table. She explained the plan. First, she'd talk to Sophie alone, then invite each parent in separately to discuss any concerns. I agreed, though my nerves thrummed. Sophie seemed at ease. She followed Dr. Harwood in, glancing back at me briefly with a small smile. I sat in the waiting area, across from Lila. Tense silence. Finally, Lila whispered, "Thank you for letting me come." I shrugged. "It's for Sophie." She nodded. We lapsed into silence again. About 20 minutes later, Dr. Harwood reappeared, leading Sophie by the hand. "Sophie, sweetie, can you wait in the other play area for a moment? I'll talk to your parents." She gestured to a second waiting room with coloring books. Sophie nodded, glancing uncertainly at us, then waddled off. Once Sophie was out of earshot, Dr. Harwood shut the door. All right. So I spent a bit of time with Sophie to gauge her emotional state. She's sweet and polite, but quite anxious about the changes in her family structure. She mentioned missing her old house, being confused why you two aren't living together. She also expressed worry that Daddy might leave again. My heart constricted at that last part. She's so afraid of abandonment. Dr. Harwood continued. In general, children Sophie's age see the world in black and white. She wants her parents together. She feels powerless. We can help her process this through play therapy, gentle conversation. But it's vital that the two of you present a united front about loving her, even if you're separated. Lila nodded, tears in her eyes. I forced myself to keep my expression neutral. Dr. Harwood eyed us. Are there any major conflicts in your co-parenting arrangement that might filter down to Sophie's stress? We exchanged glances. Lila swallowed. We have some complicated adult issues, but we're trying to keep them separate from Sophie. That's good. Dr. Harwood said. I also want to emphasize that children pick up on tension. If you two are constantly clashing, Sophie will sense it. If possible, keep communication polite, consistent. She needs reassurance. I nodded, though inside I seethed with the knowledge of all the lies. For Sophie's sake, though, I said, I'll do my best. Dr. Harwood then suggested a schedule of weekly sessions for Sophie, plus a few sessions with both parents. I silently agreed. Not sure how I'd handle being in a room with Lila for therapy, but I wanted Sophie stable. After the meeting, we retrieved Sophie, who was engrossed in coloring. She beamed up at me. Daddy, look, I drew a flower. I crouched, admiring the childish scribbles. That's beautiful. She turned to Lila. Mommy, can I show you? Lila smiled, voice trembling. Of course, baby. A weird pang of sorrow twisted my chest, seeing them share a moment. If only Lila hadn't shattered our trust. That night, after dropping Sophie with Lila, I drove around aimlessly. The sky was a dark navy, the stars obscured by city glow. I stopped at a convenience store for a coffee, then found myself parking near the old Carter house again. The for sale sign still sat forlornly in the yard. I unlocked the door, stepping inside. No electricity now, just darkness. Using my phone flashlight, I wandered to my old bedroom. Empty. Dull memories flickered. Then I heard footsteps behind me, making me jump. I whirled, heart hammering. It was Neil, Betty's friend, standing in the hallway with a flashlight of his own. Whoa, hey, he blurted, raising a hand. Didn't mean to scare you. My pulse raced. What the hell are you doing here? How did you get in? He glanced around sheepishly. I saw a side window was loose. I was checking the property. Heard rumors you might sell. I'm a part-time house flipper, so I was curious. Sorry if this is trespassing. He gave a half smile, shining his flashlight at the dusty floor. Guess I should have asked your permission. My anger flared, though I tried to quell the creeping paranoia. Yes, you should have. This is private property. Next time, call me. He nodded, stepping back. Understood. My bad. So you're okay? I heard about your legal issues. Betty mentioned a custody arrangement with Sophie. I frowned, bristling. Why do you care? He shrugged, gaze flicking away. I care about Betty. She's had a rough go. Family drama. I just want everyone to be stable. I studied him. Was he telling the truth, or was he somehow entangled in this fiasco? He seemed sincere enough, but part of me didn't trust easily anymore. Look, I appreciate your concern for Betty, but leave my personal matters alone, and don't break into my property again. He gave a slight nod, stepping toward the side door. Sure thing. Sorry again. Then he disappeared into the night. I stood there, unsettled. A house flipper, really? Or a busybody meddling in my affairs? With the house's musty darkness pressing in, I left and locked up, determined to fix that loose window. On the drive back to the condo, I rolled scenarios in my head. Neil potentially snooping, Betty's motives, Brian's revelations. Everyone had secrets, it seemed. Another text from Brian appeared. Did you confront her about Marcus? Are you okay? I snarled, ignoring it. He's the last person I want to confide in. Over the next few days, I tried to keep life steady. Work, childcare for Sophie, brief interactions with Lila about logistics. The question of Marcus loomed. If Lila was telling the truth that this man had disappeared, maybe it was a moot point. Still, I couldn't shake the possibility that he might resurface. I almost wanted to hire a private investigator to track him down, confirm or deny paternity. But would that help Sophie? One evening, as I was browsing job-related emails, another contact popped up. Kyle Stevens, an old friend from college who'd become a PI. I hadn't spoken to him in years, but the memory of his investigative flair flickered. Maybe I should. If I can confirm Marcus is gone for good, or if he's worthless, I can put that fear to rest. But it felt like opening Pandora's box. Did I really want to chase a ghost? One morning, around 9 a.m., I got a call from Keith. His tone was urgent. Evan, good news. The DA's decided not to pursue full assault charges, citing lack of cooperation from the victim. They're offering a misdemeanor plea deal, simple assault with probation, no jail time if you accept. Relief flooded me. Are you serious? That's it? That's it, Keith said. You'd have a record but not a felony. I advise taking it unless you want to gamble in court. I pinched the bridge of my nose. Yeah, I'll take the deal. A misdemeanor is better than risking prison. Keith sighed happily. All right, I'll finalize the paperwork. Congratulations, man. You dodged a major bullet. I smiled grimly. Yeah, thanks for your help. After hanging up, I leaned back in my office chair, letting the relief wash over me. No prison, no felony. Just probation, presumably. I can handle that. That evening, celebrating the news alone, I bought a decent bottle of whiskey. After Sophie was asleep, I poured myself a glass, letting the smoky warmth calm my nerves. The worst legal threat was off the table, though I'd have that assault on my record. My phone lit up with a text from Betty, of all people. Heard about the DA's decision. I'm glad you won't be going to jail. For Sophie's sake. I considered ignoring it, but typed back, Thanks. We never needed that drama, but it's done. She replied, We need to talk sometime about family matters, please. I stared at her message. Family matters? She's divorcing Brian, presumably still hates Lila. Did she want to patch things up with me? I typed, Maybe. Not sure what else there is to say. She didn't respond, leaving me with more questions. That weekend, Sophie stayed with Lila. I used the free time to do some condo cleanup, bills, laundry. Late Saturday, I found myself compelled to text Betty. Okay, let's talk tomorrow. Noon at Lily's Diner. She quickly agreed. Next day, I arrived first, sipping coffee in a corner booth. Lily's was a cozy place with checkered floors, known for big breakfasts. Betty arrived in a black coat, hair pulled up, eyes tired. She slid into the booth across from me. Evan? She greeted softly. Thanks for meeting. Sure, I said, leaning back. So, what's up? She fiddled with the sugar packets. I wanted to apologize for everything. I feel guilty. I planted the seed about using Brian to help Lila conceive. If I hadn't done that, she trailed off, eyes brimming with tears. This never would have spiraled out of control. I studied her. I appreciate the apology, but yeah, your idea was twisted. Did you know Lila also used some guy named Marcus? She shook her head vehemently. No, that was news to me. I only knew about it after the fact. She lied to me too. Brian and I thought the arrangement was just once or twice. Then it kept going. I never dreamed she'd find another man. She sighed. I'm disgusted with both of them, but I also feel partly responsible. I nodded. So are you still divorcing Brian? Yes, absolutely, she said firmly. He can't father more children anyway. Your beating destroyed that possibility, and I don't trust him not to cheat again. She stared into her coffee. But I still have to think about our kids. They need a father, but not him, apparently. I grunted, unsure how to respond. She cleared her throat. Anyway, how's Sophie? I sipped my coffee. She's coping. Therapy's helping. She doesn't fully grasp the adult drama, but she knows something's off. Betty nodded sadly. Poor girl. She's innocent in all this. She paused. So is it true Sophie might not be Brian's after all? I exhaled. That's what Lila says. She's admitting a possibility it's some Marcus guy. No clue if he's real father or if he vanished. Either way, Sophie's mind a raise. Betty gave a small, tentative smile. Despite everything, you're a good dad, Evan. She's lucky to have you. I swallowed, the compliment both warming and stinging. Thanks. I just want to move forward. Let her have a stable childhood if that's even possible now. Betty nodded. Yeah, me too. After an awkward pause, she sighed. Well, I guess that's all I wanted. To say sorry, let you know I'm here if you need help with Sophie or anything. I'm working part-time now. I can babysit. I contemplated it. I'll think about it, I said carefully. The idea of letting Betty watch Sophie felt like letting another conspirator in. But perhaps she really was remorseful. We parted without any further drama. The diner's door chimed behind her. I finished my coffee alone, reflecting on how twisted our once close circle had become. Stepping outside into the midday sun, I resolved to keep forging a path for Sophie's sake, mindful that each adult around us had their own regrets and secrets. The next major step would be to finalize the divorce, secure a stable home environment for Sophie, and hopefully put the entire fiasco behind us. If only it were that simple. Ever since I spoke with Betty at the diner, The notion of further tracking Marcus kept drilling into my head. On one level, I resented the time, money, and emotional energy required to chase a ghost who might never reappear. On another level, I knew I couldn't rest while the possibility lingered that Sophie had a biological father out there who might barge in any day. The idea of him filing a legal challenge to claim her as his own was horrifying. A week passed in a blur of normal life, co-parenting with Lila, shuffling Sophie to preschool, exchanging polite but cold words at the door. I also had my first official probation check-in at the local courthouse, which was awkward but straightforward. The officer, a tall woman named Frances, simply explained the conditions. No further violent offenses, routine check-ins, no leaving the state without permission. She flicked a glance at the bruise on my knuckles still lingering from the fight but said nothing. Sophie's therapy sessions continued. She was an observant little thing, frequently asking, "Daddy, why can't we all live together again?" Or, "When is Mommy coming to see me here?" That last question stung, because Lila rarely set foot in my condo. Too many raw memories, apparently. One morning at work, halfway through a design project, I found myself scrolling my phone contacts. My eyes stopped on the name Kyle Stevens, a college friend who'd pivoted from business major to private investigations. He'd done mostly skip tracing and background checks, not high-end detective work, but that might be enough for my situation. Before I could doubt the decision, I pressed call. He answered on the second ring, voice tinged with pleasant surprise. "Evan Carter. Long time no talk, man. How's life?" I tried not to sound too grim. "Complicated, Kyle. I need your help if you still do PI stuff." He chuckled. "I do. Wish it were for a happier reason. Want to fill me in?" So I did, summarizing the insane story. The affair, the unknown father, the name Marcus. Kyle listened intently, the line occasionally buzzing with static. At the end, he whistled softly. "Hell of a situation, buddy. I can try to track him. But if he's using a common first name and we only have, what, a rumor that he's some contractor? That's a needle in a haystack." I sighed. "I know. The only extra lead is that he was connected to a friend of Lila's. I might get that friend's name from her. Also, we suspect some motel receipts or something from 4+ years ago. Might be a cold trail, but I have to try." Kyle's tone was pragmatic yet reassuring. "All right, we can do it systematically. I'll come to Mayfield Springs. We'll talk face-to-face, gather details. You sure you want to open this can of worms?" My jaw tightened. "I do. I need to know if he's out there ready to cause trouble for Sophie, or if he's a non-factor. Either way, I can't keep living in limbo." He agreed to drive up next weekend, and we ended the call. A tremor of relief or fear fluttered in my gut. What if this search unearths even uglier truths? But I forced myself to remain resolute. That afternoon, I had an unexpected visitor at my office. Neil, the so-called house flipper and friend of Betty. He showed up in the Rocketdyne lobby telling the receptionist he had an appointment. She paged me, sounding confused. When I stepped out to meet him, I kept my voice calm. "Neil, what are you doing here?" He raised his palms in a non-threatening gesture. "I tried calling, but you didn't pick up. It's about that old Carter house you own. Look, I truly am in the house-flipping business. I'm finishing a project across town and have capital to invest. I want to see if you're interested in selling, that's all." I studied him, heart pounding with leftover distrust. "I am, actually, but I'd typically go through a realtor, not random unsolicited visits." He nodded, face earnest. "I get it. Let me skip the stealth approach. I'm legit. I can pay cash if the price is right, or we can do a normal closing. I figure you're busy with other stuff, so maybe this helps us both." Part of me remained suspicious, but another part recognized an opportunity. The house carried baggage. Why not let it go? Money from a sale could secure a better place for Sophie and me. "All right," I conceded. "Email me your proposal. We can talk numbers." He grinned. "Perfect. Thanks, Evan. Didn't mean to intrude on your job. I'll be in touch." Then he left, strolling out of the lobby with unhurried confidence. Returning to my desk, I mulled it over. Maybe Neil was just an ambitious entrepreneur, but something about his repeated presence in my personal orbit still nagged at me. The next day, Thursday, was one of those handover days. Sophie moved from me back to Lila. This time, Lila texted that she'd pick Sophie up at my condo around 4. I worked half day, planning to be home to help Sophie gather her things. At 3:55 p.m., the doorbell rang. Sophie was busy stuffing crayons into her backpack, so I opened the door. Instead of Lila, I found Betty, looking tired but determined. I stiffened. Betty? Where's Lila? She tucked a strand of auburn hair behind her ear. She asked me to pick Sophie up. She's not feeling well. May I come in? My gut churned. All right. I stepped aside. She entered, glancing around the condo's modest living room. Sophie, hearing the voices, ran in. Aunt Betty. She gave Betty a hug. Where's Mommy? Betty forced a smile. Mommy's at her place. She's a bit sick, but she'll see you soon, sweetie. She knelt to help Sophie zip her backpack. Then she pulled me aside. Lila's in some kind of funk. I think she might be depressed, or physically ill, I'm not sure. I tried asking, but she brushed me off. I frowned. She's not responding to me about anything deeper than scheduling. If she's sick, she should get medical care. Betty looked worried. I agree. She insisted it's just stress. I'll keep an eye on her. She stood, lowering her voice. Anyway, I hope it's okay that I step in this time. I looked over at Sophie, who was happily showing Betty her new coloring pages. Then I nodded. Fine. Just keep me updated if anything changes with Lila. She pursed her lips. I will. Also, about what we discussed my babysitting offer. If you ever need someone, let me know. I have a flexible schedule now that I parted ways with the furniture business. I hesitated, recalling how uneasy it felt to let any of them close again. But Betty seemed genuinely apologetic about her role in the fiasco. All right, I said quietly. I'll think about it. We said goodbye to Sophie at the door. She clung to my leg a moment, face scrunching. Daddy, are you okay? You look sad. My throat tightened. I'm fine, kiddo. I'll see you in a few days. Take care of Mommy, okay? She nodded solemnly. Yes, Daddy. Then she followed Betty out. I closed the door, feeling that familiar ache. With the condo empty again, I resolved to push forward with the weekend plan, meeting Kyle to investigate Marcus. Time to gather every puzzle piece, I told myself. Saturday arrived, and with it, Kyle's battered Honda Civic rolling into the condo parking lot. He hopped out wearing jeans and a windbreaker, sporting the same boyish grin I remembered from our college days. We shook hands, did an awkward half-hug. He eyed me, noticing the tension lines around my eyes. You look older, man. This has been rough, huh? I snorted. Understatement, come on in. We climbed the stairs, letting him set his overnight bag in my spare corner. Then we settled at the small kitchen table, discussing the fiasco in more detail. Kyle took meticulous notes. So, we have a first name, Marcus, possibly a traveling contractor. The approximate time frame, around 5 years ago. He was introduced to Lila via some friend or possibly a fertility group connection. That's not much to go on, but we can start. I nodded. I can ask Lila or Betty for more clues, but they're not exactly thrilled to revisit that period. I might have to pry. He tapped his pen. We can also look at motels, particularly the time window from about 5 years back. Some keep records longer, or we might get lucky with a credit card. But he might have used cash. I sighed. Let's do it. Where do we start? Kyle shrugged. I'll try the direct approach first. Talk to Lila if she's willing, or Betty, or both. Let me see if they'll cooperate. If we can confirm the friend who introduced her to Marcus, that might lead somewhere. Then we cross-check contractor licenses in the region. See if any go by Marcus with matching physical descriptions. We might at least get a few leads. Though it felt invasive, I realized I was basically consenting to Kyle rummaging through these personal details. All right. Just handle them gently. Everyone's raw. He gave a wry grin. I'm a professional. Well, mostly. He reached for his phone. Shall I call Betty first, or do you want to set it up? I paused. I'll text her. She might be more receptive to me. Then I can see if Lila's up for it. She's supposedly not doing well. Kyle nodded. Great. Meanwhile, I'll do some online searching. Let's see if we can find any trace of a Marcus connected to local fertility boards or older classified ads. People sometimes post about sperm donation or private arrangements. The notion made me cringe, but I told him to proceed. We parted ways. Kyle hunched over his laptop, me stepping onto the balcony to text Betty. Betty, I have a friend in investigations. We're trying to find Marcus for closure about Sophie's paternity. Will you help us? She responded within minutes. Yes, I'll help. I want everyone to have clarity, especially for Sophie's sake. When and where? We arranged to meet at the diner again that evening. I told Kyle, and he prepared a small set of questions. A sense of momentum propelled me forward, though I dreaded what we might unearth. That evening, the same cozy diner. Betty arrived first, nursing a mug of tea. Kyle and I joined her, sliding into the booth. She eyed Kyle curiously. I introduced him. This is Kyle Stevens, a PI friend from my college days. He's here to help track down Marcus. Betty offered a polite handshake. I'll do whatever I can. I just want Sophie to have the truth, and for this mess to end. Kyle gave a reassuring nod. We appreciate it. So, Betty, can you recall how Lila found Marcus? Any friend's name or website or circumstances? Betty frowned, tapping her nails on the table. It was around 5 years ago, maybe a bit more. Lila was frantic about conceiving, especially once the attempts with Brian kept not working immediately. One day she mentioned meeting a friend of a friend who had done private donations. I never met him, but she called him Marcus. I told her it was risky, but she insisted. She said he was a traveling construction contractor or something like that. I think he was from Redwood County originally, maybe an hour or two away. Kyle scribbled notes. Redwood County, that's south of here. Did she mention how she reached him or what friend connected them? Betty chewed her lip. Yes, it might have been a co-worker at the furniture store, a woman named Teresa. Teresa had known a guy who donated for someone else. That's how it came up in conversation, apparently. I perked up. Teresa, did you know her last name or contact info? Betty nodded. Teresa Boyd, I think. She quit the furniture store a few years back. Moved to Wuck knows where. But maybe we can find her on social media. Kyle smiled. That's a good lead. Let's see if we can track Teresa down. He paused. Anything else about Marcus? Physical description? Job specifics? Betty shrugged. Lila said he was mid-30s, stocky build, had some tattoos on his forearms, short dark hair. But that's secondhand from her. He was apparently discreet, demanded a certain fee for donations. She only tried with him once or twice before deciding Brian was the better bet because it kept everything in the family. She exhaled, a look of regret crossing her face. I should have realized how out of control it was, but I was busy with my own kids, clueless that she was juggling 2 men behind the scenes. Kyle jotted all this down, thanked her. We parted with Betty, promising to call if she recalled more. Kyle and I walked to the car under the glowing streetlights, hearts pounding with this new data. Next day, Kyle dove into searching for Teresa Boyd. He had a few hits on social media, mostly women in the Tri-County area with that name. One had mutual friends connected to Waterstone and Sons Furniture. Bingo. Her profile was private, but we gleaned she might be living in Redwood County. We decided to attempt direct contact. Kyle crafted a polite message. Hi, Teresa. I'm contacting you regarding a friend named Lila who used to work at Waterstone and Sons. We're trying to locate an old acquaintance named Marcus. Could you help? He used his professional-sounding handle. Then we waited. Meanwhile, we scoured Redwood County online forums, contractor boards, even local news archives. A few Marcus entries popped up, mostly unrelated. A name popped once, Marcus Green, a licensed contractor cited for a building code violation. But there was no guarantee it was our guy. The photo from a local news story was too grainy to confirm details. By mid-afternoon, we got a social media reply from Teresa. Who is this? Why are you asking about Marcus? This is kind of weird. Kyle responded calmly. I'm a private investigator helping a client who may be impacted by Marcus's whereabouts. We just want to confirm if he's around or if you have a forwarding contact. We don't want personal details beyond that. Teresa replied soon after, I need more info. Are you referencing the donation arrangement from years ago? I'm not comfortable talking about it. Clearly, she was aware. We pressed gently, explaining that a child might be involved, and we just wanted to see if he had any paternal interest. She went silent for hours. Kyle and I felt the tension ratchet up as we watched the chat screen. Around 6 p.m., Teresa messaged, Look, I introduced him to your friend's sister, yes. He was well, not a safe bet. Real shady. He hopped from job to job, had some run-ins with the law, domestic stuff. I lost track of him. Last I heard, he'd left Redwood County for Newbridge, 2 states over. That was maybe 4 years ago. Reading that sent a chill down my spine. A man with domestic issues, could he want to claim Sophie or use her for some twisted scheme? Teresa confirmed she had no current contact. She only had an old phone number that no longer worked. Kyle asked if he had any close relatives in Redwood County. She thought maybe an aunt, but no name or address. She ended with, "Honestly, your friend was nuts to do it with him. He's not father material." Kyle typed a final, polite thank you. Then we stared at each other. "So, the trail leads out of state," he mused. "He's presumably vanished, with some shady background. Could be a blessing in disguise if he never resurfaces." I rubbed my face. "Yeah, or a ticking time bomb if he shows up wanting money or something." Kyle folded his laptop. "I could do a deeper skip trace. Might cost more time, but we can see if he's got a record or if he's behind bars somewhere." I nodded. "Go for it. I need closure." He patted my shoulder. "You got it, man." That evening, Lila texted me out of the blue. "Any updates on Sophie's father situation? You said you were investigating." I stared at the message, debating how much to reveal. Finally, I typed, "We suspect he's left the state, might have a bad record, probably not returning. We have no current contact." Her reply came quickly. "So we can't be sure who fathered her. If he's gone for good, maybe it doesn't matter." My jaw clenched at the casual tone. It matters to me. If he's truly gone, good. But I'm going to confirm. She responded with a single sad-faced emoji and a final line. "I understand. Let me know if you learn anything else. And thanks for trying to protect Sophie." I set the phone aside, a swirl of frustration and pity for her rising. She was living in a self-imposed penance, apparently. Yet I couldn't quell my resentment for how she'd tossed me into this fiasco. In the following days, Kyle set up advanced searches, scouring national databases for a Marcus, matching approximate age and physical descriptors, with Redwood County ties. We got potential hits, but verifying them was tricky. Meanwhile, Sophie returned to my condo, bringing a wave of normalcy as I helped her with a pre-K art project and bedtime routines. Her presence reminded me that all these adult nightmares served one goal: her long-term well-being. One afternoon, Kyle knocked on my bedroom door, laptop in hand, eyes lit with discovery. I found a record. Marcus Walters, 36, from Redwood County, arrested 4 years ago for a bar fight. Possibly the same guy. The booking photo shows a muscular, tattooed forearm. The timeline fits that he left Redwood after the arrest. They mention he might have relocated to Newbridge post-probation. That's a lead. I peered at the booking photo on his screen. The guy had short, dark hair, broad shoulders, faint scowl. "Yeah, that could be him," I muttered. "We have no direct proof, but it's the best match so far." "Now what?" Kyle shrugged. "We can attempt to get a current address. Might have to call the Redwood County Courthouse, see if they have updated records from his probation. Then, if we track him down, you decide if you want to contact him." My stomach churned. The idea of directly contacting a violent offender felt like rattling a hornet's nest. But I said, let's see if we can at least confirm he's in Newbridge. Over the next couple of evenings, Kyle and I hammered the phones, making discreet inquiries. Redwood County officials stonewalled us on personal data, but using a friend in the courthouse, Kyle gleaned a rumored relocation address, a small trailer park in Newbridge. No confirmation, though. The last official record was a bench warrant for a missed hearing 6 months ago, so he might be wanted, or he might have skipped town again. Finally, I looked at Kyle over our messy table strewn with notes. This guy's off the grid. Even if we find him, there's no guarantee he'd care about Sophie. He might resent being pinned for a kid, and he's apparently trouble. Maybe it's better if we let it go. Kyle leaned back. Could be, but you said you want to be sure. If he's truly on the run or living some shady life, it might reduce the chance he surfaces to claim fatherhood. That's a silver lining. I exhaled. Yeah, let's hold off on actively chasing him further for now. I'd prefer not to invite a criminal into Sophie's world. Kyle nodded. I get it. If he tries to show up, we'll be ready with the data we have. In the meantime, Maybe you can finalize your divorce, build stability for Sophie, and move on. A small wave of relief washed over me. Yes, move on. That was the goal, though I still sensed unresolved pieces lurking. If indeed Marcus was the father, that meant Sophie's paternal line was a swirling question mark. But she had me, and maybe that was enough. With Marcus presumably out of the picture, I refocused on the practical steps, finalizing the divorce, securing a stable home for Sophie and me, and balancing the uneasy co-parenting with Lila. Work was more or less stable. My boss had cooled on the suspicion that I was a ticking time bomb. Probation was going smoothly so far. My assault case was behind me as long as I stayed out of trouble. One day, my attorney Keith called with an update on the divorce proceedings. Lila isn't contesting anything, so we can finalize quickly. She's waiving spousal support claims given the circumstances. She only asks for some basic visitation with Sophie, so we can get this done within a month. I felt a pang of melancholy at the thought, the official end of our marriage, once a shining promise of a happy life. But that life was gone. All right, I said quietly. Let's wrap it up. Keith also mentioned the old house. Did you find a buyer? I recall you wanted to sell. Yes, a potential buyer named Neil. He's checking the property. If the price is good, I'll sign. I want a fresh start. Keith sounded pleased. Good thinking. That'll free up capital for a better place for you and Sophie. I hung up, heart heavy yet resolved. A new beginning is what we need. I decided to have a conversation with Sophie about some changes, though I'd keep it simple. She was playing on the living room rug, scribbling pictures of sunshine and flowers while I mentally rehearsed. Sophie, I said gently, sitting beside her. Soon, Mommy and I will be officially divorced. That's like we won't be married anymore. She frowned, crayon stilling. But you're not living together anyway. I nodded. Right. So it won't change much from what we do now. You'll still see Mommy and me separately, but I wanted you to know. She stared at the drawing. Does that mean you can't be friends? My throat constricted. Friends? We'll try to be friends for your sake. We both love you. She bit her lip. Okay, she said quietly, then resumed coloring. She didn't cry. Maybe she'd grown used to the reality of us being apart. Still, a pang of guilt rippled through me. But I reminded myself this was inevitable, given all that had happened. Days rolled by. I was supposed to meet Neil for a formal walkthrough of the old Carter house. We scheduled it on a Saturday afternoon. I left Sophie with Betty for a few hours, my first time accepting Betty's babysitting offer. As I dropped Sophie off, I felt anxious, but Betty smiled warmly. We'll do some baking. She'll have fun. Sophie nodded happily, trusting her aunt. I drove to the old house. Neil arrived soon after in a pickup truck wearing casual jeans and a flannel shirt. He greeted me politely. Thanks for letting me see the inside in daylight. I nodded, unlocking the door. Sure. Just so you know, the place is old, might need rewiring or new plumbing. He stepped in, flashlight in hand. I've seen worse. If I can get it for the right price, I'll do the updates and flip it. He walked from room to room, checking each detail. I followed, occasionally pointing out areas that needed repair. The leaky spot in the roof, the ancient furnace, the squeaky floor in the hallway. At the end, we stood in the living room. He jotted notes on a clipboard. Okay, so it definitely needs work. I'll make you an offer by tomorrow, probably in the low range, given the remodeling needed. I shrugged. Fair enough. I'd like a quick sale. Let me know. He gave a small smile. I will. And thanks for trusting me to see the place. I know you've been wary of me. My eyes narrowed slightly. Because you kept showing up in odd places. He raised his hands. I get it. My approach was weird, but I promise I was just scouting potential properties. Apologies again for spooking you. I just nodded. Okay then. We'll be in touch. He left, and I locked up, feeling oddly relieved. Maybe that chapter of my life can finally close. When I returned to Betty's, I found Sophie giggling in the kitchen, face smudged with flour. Betty was kneading cookie dough. The air smelled sweet. They both looked up, beaming. We're making sugar cookies, Betty announced. Sophie ran to me. Daddy, can we do this at your condo too? I chuckled. Maybe next time, kiddo. We'll see if I can find the supplies. Betty offered me a cookie sample. As I tasted the warm, sugary treat, memories surfaced once upon a time. Betty had done all the holiday baking for the family gatherings. She'd always been the more domestic sister, ironically enough. I thanked her for watching Sophie. She brushed aside the thanks. Anytime. She's a joy. You've done a good job with her, Evan. I must have looked unconvinced, because she touched my arm lightly. I mean it. I know you're dealing with so much, but she's happy when she's with you. A flicker of gratitude stirred. Thanks. I appreciate the help. She nodded. We're all just trying to pick up the pieces. That evening, Neil texted me an offer for the house. It was lower than the market average, but not insultingly so, given the repairs needed. I mulled it over, deciding it was probably fair. I told him I'd accept if he covered closing costs. He agreed, and we arranged for a quick sale with Keith's assistance. I couldn't help but feel a sense of finality as I emailed Keith to draft the paperwork. Goodbye, childhood home. But it was time to shed that baggage. 2 days later, I found a decent listing for a small 3-bedroom near the outskirts of town, a better location than the condo, with a fenced yard. The price was within reach if I combined my savings and the proceeds from the old house. The place wasn't flashy, but it looked stable, kid-friendly. I set up a viewing, thinking maybe it had become Sophie's new home base. Divorce finalization day arrived with a whimper, not a bang. Keith accompanied me to the courthouse. Lila arrived alone, looking pale. We didn't speak much as we signed the final papers. She trembled slightly, tears in her eyes, but said nothing. The judge's clerk stamped the documents, filed them, and just like that, we were no longer husband and wife. Afterward, in the hallway, we stood facing each other. She whispered, "I'm sorry it ended like this." I forced a stiff nod. Me too. We parted ways, a hollowness in my chest. Now what? Sophie remained blissfully unaware of the official date of our divorce, since our living situation was already separate. I continued with the routine. I had her from Sunday evening to Thursday morning, then Lila had her from Thursday afternoon to Sunday. One Sunday, about a week after the divorce, Lila unexpectedly texted me, "Could we talk about final custody terms? Maybe we can figure out a schedule that's more stable for Sophie." I was reluctant to open more negotiations, but I recognized the validity of rethinking the schedule. Sophie sometimes got confused midweek transitions. I typed back, "All right, let's meet at the usual diner tomorrow, 6 p.m. I'll get a sitter for Sophie." She agreed. Monday evening came, and I left Sophie with Betty once more, my second time, trusting her for babysitting. Then I drove to the diner. Lila was already seated in a booth, sipping water, wearing a sweater that hung on her slender frame. As I slid into the booth, I noticed fresh bruises on her left wrist. My gut nodded. "Lila, your arm, are you hurting yourself? Or what's happening?" She froze, then tried to tug her sleeve down. "It's nothing, just clumsy. Let's focus on Sophie." I narrowed my eyes. "You said that before. I don't believe it. Who's hurting you?" She looked away, eyes brimming with tears. "No one. Please, let's not get into that." Anger flared. Is there a new abuser in her life, or is it self-harm? But I forced myself to focus. Fine. Let's talk custody. She cleared her throat, voice trembling. "I was thinking a simpler schedule might help. Maybe I take her weekends and you have her weekdays, or vice versa, so she's not bouncing midweek. Also, I'm looking for a new job soon, so maybe that changes my availability." I listened, scribbling notes. We tossed around ideas. Eventually, we arrived at a potential arrangement. I'd keep her Monday to Friday, since I was working but could handle daycare. Lila would take her Friday night to Monday morning. That gave Sophie a consistent school routine with me, plus weekends with her mom. That might be better for her school schedule, I agreed, though I worried about losing weekend bonding time. But let's see how it goes. Lila nodded, hugging her arms. She looked frail, as if she'd lost even more weight. "Thank you, Evan." Then, hesitating, she murmured, I'm sorry about everything. I know I keep saying it, but I truly mean it." I sighed. "I know, but apologies don't erase the damage." She blinked back tears, voice small. "I understand." We parted with a handshake of sorts. As she left, I couldn't shake the suspicion those bruises indicated something more sinister. Is it my place to meddle? She wasn't my wife anymore. But I still cared about Sophie's mother on some level, if only for Sophie's sake. That week I introduced the new schedule. Sophie adapted surprisingly well. "So I get to be with Mommy on weekends?" she asked. "Will that be fun?" I forced a smile. "Sure, you'll have more time with her on Saturdays and Sundays. I'll pick you up Monday mornings for school. Sound good?" She nodded. "Yes, Daddy." I realized I'd be missing out on weekend fun zoo trips, movie outings. But maybe we could do after-school things. And truthfully, a chunk of unstructured weekend time alone might help me. A chance to rebuild my social life, or just breathe. One morning, I took Sophie to pre-K as usual. Then I spontaneously drove to that new listing, the modest 3-bedroom near the outskirts. The realtor, a cheerful older woman named Sandra, greeted me. We walked through the house. Hardwood floors, a small but functional kitchen, a cozy living room with a big window letting in daylight. The backyard was fenced, a battered swing set in the corner. I pictured Sophie bounding around, squealing with delight. Sandra turned to me, beaming. "It's perfect for a small family. Priced to move quickly. Are you interested in making an offer?" I exhaled, imagining the finances. With the sale of my old house nearly closing, I could manage it. "Yes, I think so. This could be the home Sophie grows up in. A fresh start, free from the ghosts of betrayal." We discussed details and I signed a few preliminary forms. My heart pounded with excitement and anxiety. Am I really building a stable life? That evening, I got a text from Neil. "House sale is scheduled for next week. Great. Good luck with your new place." I replied curtly, "Thanks. I appreciate it." He responded, "No problem. By the way, watch out for the plumbing in the upstairs bathroom. It's older than we thought." I shook my head, feeling both grateful and unsettled that he was so thorough. But if he was paying cash, so be it. As I prepared dinner, some quick spaghetti, Sophie tugged at my pant leg. "Daddy, can we watch that dinosaur movie again?" "Sure, Munchkin," I said, ruffling her hair. "But after dinner, okay?" She nodded happily, skipping to the TV. This is normal life, I thought with a soft smile. We're surviving. Maybe soon we'll even thrive. Yet a flicker of anxiety remained about Lila's bruises and the potential threat of Marcus. The world wasn't done throwing curveballs. But for this night, I clung to the small comfort of domestic routine. Time marched on, bringing a semblance of normality. With the divorce finalized, the old Carter house nearly sold, and a pending offer on a new place, I felt a cautious optimism. Sophie was adjusting to the new custody schedule. Weekdays with me, weekends with Lila. School was going well. We had no fresh drama from Brian or the elusive Marcus. Then, one Friday evening, as I dropped Sophie off at Lila's new apartment, I noticed someone else's car parked out front. The same battered sedan I'd glimpsed a few times earlier in the year. My stomach churned. Could that be a new boyfriend? Is he the one bruising Lila? I held Sophie's hand as we climbed the apartment stairs. The door was partially open. Inside, I heard raised voices, a man's low rumble, and Lila's trembling replies. My protective instincts flared. Should I barge in? Sophie frowned. "Daddy, who's yelling?" I gently squeezed her hand. "Maybe Mommy's watching TV." But I knew better. I knocked on the door. The voices stopped abruptly. Lila appeared, face pale. I offered Sophie a quick hug goodbye. "Everything okay?" I asked quietly, scanning the apartment. Behind Lila stood a tall, broad man with short hair, tattoos sneaking from under his shirt sleeves. My heart lurched. He matched the description of Marcus, but I wasn't sure. Lila forced a smile at Sophie. "Hi, baby. Go put your bag in your room, okay?" Sophie nodded, trotting off. Lila looked at me, fear dancing in her eyes. She lowered her voice. "This is a friend. Don't worry, we're fine." The man stepped closer, arms folded. His gaze flicked from Lila to me. "You the ex-husband?" he drawled. Something about his tone bristled me. "Yeah, that's me. And you are, Lila tried to interject. "It's just a friend from—" He cut her off. "Name's Bryce. We're hanging out. Is that a problem?" His eyes gleamed with challenge. My fists clenched instinctively. "No problem, as long as nobody's hurting Lila." I stared him down. He smirked. "Relax, pal. She's fine." Lila tugged my sleeve, practically pleading. "Please, Evan, don't start something. We're okay, I promise." Her wrist bore fresh bruises. My blood boiled, but I forced myself to remain calm for Sophie's sake. "All right," I muttered, stepping back. "I'll see you Sunday evening, Lila." I left, heart pounding, worried for her well-being. Should I call the police? She's no longer my wife, but she's Sophie's mother. The memory of her refusing to talk about the bruises replayed. If she's chosen an abusive partner, what does that mean for Sophie? All weekend, I wrestled with that dilemma. If I confronted Lila, she might deny everything. If I escalated it, she might cut off communication. Meanwhile, Sophie was presumably in that environment. I texted Betty for insights. "Lila has a new friend named Bryce. Is that safe for Sophie?" Betty replied, "I suspect it's a rebound relationship. She's not telling me much. I tried to talk to her. She insists she's fine. I'm worried too." That didn't help my anxiety. I decided to watch from a distance, ready to intervene if necessary. If he's truly harming her or Sophie, I'll do whatever it takes. Sunday evening, I arrived at Lila's place to pick Sophie up. Bryce's car was gone. Lila opened the door, offering me a tense smile. No sign of bruises on her face, but her wrists still showed old marks. She led Sophie out, who seemed cheerful enough. As we stepped away, Sophie asked, "Daddy, do you know Mr. Bryce? He was in Mommy's house. He's kinda loud." I forced a neutral tone. "Is he nice to you and Mommy?" She shrugged. "He's okay, I guess. Mommy told me to stay in my room when they talk." She sounded a bit uneasy. My stomach tightened. Stay in her room? That's suspicious. I tried not to display my anger in front of Sophie. "Okay. If he ever scares you, you call me. Understood?" Sophie nodded, big eyes solemn. "Damn it, Lila, what are you doing?" Kyle had returned to his hometown but kept in contact. I updated him on this new development. "There's a different man in Lila's life, not the phantom Marcus, possibly an abuser." Kyle gave me a sympathetic ear but said there wasn't much he could do unless Lila filed charges, or I had proof that Sophie was endangered. One evening, as I was finishing dinner, the phone rang Betty, sounding frantic. "Evan, I'm at the ER with Lila. She got pushed down some steps. She claims it was an accident, but I'm sure Bryce did it." My heart lurched. "What about Sophie?" "She's with me, she's fine. Lila's just bruised, maybe a sprained ankle. They're discharging her soon, but I'm furious. I confronted Bryce. He told me to mind my own business. Then he left. Rage boiled in me. That bastard. If he's hurting her, we can get a protective order." Betty sounded uncertain. "Lila refuses to press charges. She says it was an accident, but I saw the fear in her eyes. I don't know what to do." Clenching my fists, I tried to keep my voice calm. "Keep Sophie with you. Don't let her go near that guy. I'll figure something out." I raced to the hospital. In the waiting room, I found Betty pacing. She pointed to a curtained area. I rushed in. Lila lay on a gurney, ankle bandaged, tears on her cheeks. She looked up at me in confusion. "What are you doing here?" I loomed at her side, trying to restrain my anger. "Betty told me, where is Bryce?" She shrugged weakly. "Gone. It's no big deal. I lost my balance on the stairs." I let out a harsh laugh. "Bullshit, Lila. He's abusing you. You have bruises, you end up in the ER. Why won't you admit it?" Her eyes welled up. "Because it's complicated. I thought I could handle him. He can be sweet. He just has a temper. It's my fault I triggered him." My stomach clenched. Classic battered spouse rationalization. "You triggered him? That's not how it works. He's hurting you. This can't continue." She broke into sobs. "I know, but I can't be alone. I have no one else. I ruined everything with you. My parents barely speak to me, and Betty's been so judgmental. Bryce was there for me, at least at first. I thought I deserved any anger he threw at me. I am worthless anyway." A wave of pity and frustration hit me. She's drowning in self-loathing. I gently squeezed her hand. "Lila, listen to me. You do not deserve to be abused. No matter your mistakes, please, for Sophie's sake, walk away from him." She averted her gaze. "I'll try, but I'm scared, and I can't press charges. He threatened me if I did." A fresh bolt of anger shot through me. Threatened her? Then I will. If he's endangering Sophie— She grabbed my wrist, panic in her eyes. "No, please. He doesn't do anything to Sophie. She's safe. Don't escalate this. I'll handle it." I stared at her, torn. She's not listening. She's trapped. I exhaled. "Fine. But if I hear he's near Sophie or that you're hurt again, I'll do whatever it takes to protect her. Got it? She nodded numbly. Betty and I led her out of the hospital, helped her into Betty's car. Betty shot me a worried look. I'll keep her at my place for a few days. Make sure Bryce can't get to her. I nodded. Good. Then I drove home, mind spinning. I might have to push for full custody if this continues. The next days were tense. Sophie sensed something was wrong but didn't know the details. Lila stayed with Betty, hobbling around on crutches. Bryce apparently vanished for the moment. I told Sophie that Mommy had a twisted ankle and needed rest. Meanwhile, I prepared for the final steps of selling the old house. Keith set a closing date. Neil showed up at the title office with a cashier's check. The process was quick. We shook hands, signing the last forms. Neil offered a polite, "Hope it works out for you," and left. All that suspicion might have been paranoia. He's just a business flipper. The same week, my offer on the new 3-bedroom was accepted. So in a whirlwind, I found myself balancing final custody drama, possible abuse issues with Lila, and the excitement of moving. I decided to keep the moving day hush until I was sure everything was set. One afternoon, Brian texted me again. He still had trouble talking, but typed more easily. Heard about Lila's new boyfriend. Not good. If you need help protecting Sophie, let me know. I stared at the message, resentful. Help from Brian? The man who fathered my not-daughter. Or maybe fathered, or maybe not. Part of me wanted to ignore him, but another part recognized that Brian, for all his sins, might be a formidable ally if we needed muscle or a father figure statement in court. He'd recovered somewhat from his injuries, though the hospital rumors said he'd never fully regained certain functionalities. I replied vaguely, "We'll handle it. Stay out of this." He responded, "All right. I'm here if needed. I truly regret everything." I left it at that. An unexpected development arose when one Tuesday afternoon I got a call from Redwood County, a probation officer who recognized Kyle's inquiries about Marcus Walters. She said, "I understand your investigator is searching for Mr. Walters, correct? We wanted to inform you that he's currently wanted for probation violation. If you have contact info, please pass it along. Otherwise, be advised he might be dangerous." A chill ran down my spine. I have no direct contact. He's never approached me. This is about a potential paternity matter. But thanks for letting me know. She paused. We appreciate any leads. He has a history of domestic violence. If he surfaces, be careful. I thanked her and hung up. So Marcus is indeed a violent offender. Good thing he's nowhere near us, but if he found out about Sophie, could he show up for a con or to cause trouble? Possibly. I resolved to remain vigilant. Meanwhile, I had dinner with Betty to talk about Lila's well-being. She arranged for Sophie to be with a friend so we could speak privately. We met at her house, a cozy living room with plush pillows. She looked at me wearily. Lila's still in denial. She claims Bryce hasn't called her, but I saw her phone light up with his texts. She's ignoring them. Maybe that's a start. I nodded, arms crossed. I worry what happens once she leaves your place. She can't stay forever, can she? Betty shook her head. She won't. She's talking about returning to her apartment soon, says she can handle it. I might put new locks on her door. I grimaced. She needs a restraining order, but I can't force that. All I can do is ensure Sophie is safe. If you see any sign Bryce is back, let me know. I'll get Child Protective Services involved if necessary. Betty let out a trembling breath. Right. I never imagined our family would descend into this madness. It's like every day is a new crisis. I sat on the couch, head in my hands. Yeah, well, I've had enough crisis for a lifetime. She sat beside me, voice soft. You're a good man, Evan. The way you protect Sophie, even your concern for Lila despite all she did, it shows your character. I glanced at her, feeling an odd warmth. She was looking at me with a mixture of empathy and admiration. For a flicker of a moment, I recalled the original closeness we all shared, how Betty used to be a friendly sister-in-law. Now the lines felt blurred. I quickly stood, clearing my throat. Thanks, but we all have our scars. She rose as well. I know. I appreciate you trusting me with Sophie, too. She's a sweet girl. She adores you. I nodded. She's my kid, no matter the blood test. I'd do anything for her. We shared a brief, weighted silence, then parted with a handshake. Emotions churned in me. Nothing else can happen here, I told myself firmly. Betty is still my ex-sister-in-law. That's complicated enough. Moving day arrived. I told Sophie that we'd be leaving the condo for a new house with a yard. She squealed in delight, excited to see the swing set. I hired a small moving company to handle furniture. Betty offered to help, but I declined too many complicated feelings. Kyle was out of town, so it was mostly me directing the movers. The new house felt bright, full of possibilities. I let Sophie pick her bedroom, a small one facing the backyard. She insisted on painting the walls pink. I promised we'd do that eventually. The first night sleeping in our mostly unfurnished new place, I had a sense of cautious hope. We have a home now. Sophie has stability. Let the rest of the world's chaos revolve around us. But chaos had a way of creeping in. A few days into living in the new place, I came home from work to find a note taped to the front door. It read in scrawled handwriting, "Stay out of my business or you'll regret it." No signature. My heart pounded. Could it be Bryce warning me for meddling in Lila's affairs? Or could it be some random prank? Possibly Marcus if he discovered our location. The swirl of potential threats made my stomach churn. I called the police, who arrived, shrugged, took a report, and said they had no leads. The note was too vague for any action. I installed a security camera above the porch that very evening, determined not to be caught off guard. Sophie was at Lila's that weekend, so I paced the empty house, anger and fear mixing in my chest. I won't be bullied. If Bryce threatened me, I'd push for a restraining order. If it was Marcus, I'd alert Redwood County or my probation officer. My phone was full of contacts to call in an emergency. Nobody's scaring me out of protecting my child. Yet a cold dread seeped in, reminding me how precarious everything was. Just because I'd found a house and had partial custody didn't mean we were safe from the storms of other people's drama. My fists clenched as I stared at the security camera monitor. "Bring it on," I whispered to the empty living room. I'm done being a victim. The tension escalated one stormy night, a few weeks into my new home. Rain battered the windows. Thunder rumbled overhead. Sophie was with me, coloring at the kitchen table while I washed dishes. The security camera monitor, a small tablet on the counter, flickered with night vision images of the porch. Wind-lashed branches swayed in the gloom. Around 7:30 p.m., the doorbell rang, startling me. I glanced at the monitor, couldn't see anyone. My pulse quickened. Who visits in a downpour unannounced? I told Sophie to stay put, then approached the door, phone in hand. "Who is it?" I called. No answer. The camera feed showed a vague silhouette near the edge, half off screen. This is suspicious. I cracked the door a few inches, chain latched. Rain pelted the porch. A figure hovered beyond the reach of the porch light. Then, the man stepped forward slightly, revealing short hair, broad shoulders, tattoos on his forearms. Bryce. My heart hammered. He smirked through the gap. "Hey, Carter, let me in." I glared. "No chance. What do you want?" His voice held a menacing edge. "Lila told me you keep meddling in her life, telling her to leave me. She's mine, not yours. I want you to back off." I clenched my jaw. "She's not your property. If you keep hurting her, I'll involve the cops, Bryce. Get the hell off my porch." He stepped closer, rain dripping off his brow. "I can't stand guys like you playing hero. She doesn't even want you, she told me herself. But if you keep interfering," he trailed off, letting the threat hang. My rage flared. "You come near my kid or her mother again with violence, you'll regret it." He gave a low chuckle. "That a threat?" Lightning flashed, illuminating his scowling face. "Stay away," I repeated, voice cold. Then in a flash, he kicked the door, snapping the chain. I stumbled backward as it flew open. Bryce shoved his way inside, fists clenched. Thunder boomed. The kitchen light revealed his wild eyes, gleaming with anger. I regained balance, heart pounding. "I'll call the cops." I raised my phone, finger on the dial screen. He lunged, swatting the phone from my hand. "No, you won't. I'm sick of you messing with our relationship. She's all guilt and tears because you keep telling her she's worth better. Maybe if I break you, she'll finally stop whining." Fear and fury melded. This psycho wants a fight. I raised my fists. "Get out, Bryce, now!" he sneered. "Make me!" Sophie appeared in the hallway, eyes wide. "Daddy!" she whimpered. I shouted, "Go to your room, Sophie! Lock the door!" She froze for a second, then bolted down the hall. Bryce chuckled. Scared the kid, huh? I advanced, adrenaline surging. You picked the wrong house. I'd done some boxing workouts since the Brian incident. Let's hope it helps. Bryce swung a wild punch, which I dodged. I countered with a jab to his ribs. Pain flared in my knuckles, but he staggered, cursing. He recovered fast, landed a blow to my shoulder, sending me back a step. We circled in the living room, knocking over chairs. Rain thundered outside, while Sophie's muffled cries echoed behind her locked door. Bryce hurled himself forward in a tackle. We crashed into the coffee table, splintering wood. I gasped as my side hit the floor. His knee pinned my chest. "Stay down, Carter," he growled, raising a fist. But I twisted, hooking his leg, toppling him sideways. Freed, I scrambled to my feet, heart hammering. My vision pulsed with rage. He threatened my family. Bryce swung again. I ducked, delivered an uppercut that snapped his head back. He roared in pain, spitting blood. Then I slammed my shoulder into him, driving him against the wall. Picture frames rattled and fell, glass shattering. He tried to pivot away, but I latched onto his arm. We grappled, exchanging blows. My muscles screamed. He was strong, but I was fueled by paternal fury. I managed to land a brutal punch across his jaw, making him reel. Seizing the moment, I grabbed him around the torso and flung him toward the front door. He collided with the jamb, cursing. I lunged, grabbing my phone from the floor. My thumb hit 911. Bryce saw, eyes full of panic. He scrambled up, staggering. "You'll pay for this," he hissed, then darted out into the storm, slamming the door behind him. The operator's voice crackled. 911, what's your emergency? I gasped out details, adrenaline raging. Blood streaming from a cut above my eyebrow. Home invasion suspect fled address is 224 Oakwood. Sophie peeked out from the hallway, tears streaming. "Daddy, are you okay?" I swallowed, ignoring my throbbing face. "I'm fine, Munchkin. It's over. Come here." She ran into my arms, sobbing. I was so scared. I held her tight, my own heart pounding like a drum. "I'm sorry. It's going to be okay." He's gone. But for how long? Police arrived in 10 minutes, sirens wailing. I stepped onto the porch, soaked from the rain blowing in. The lead officer, a gruff woman named Sergeant Ellis, noted my bruised face, scattered furniture. I explained what happened. He forced his way in. We fought. He fled. She took my statement, glancing at the security camera. "Does that camera have footage?" "Yes," I said, rushing to pull the memory card. The footage might show Bryce's entry. Perfect evidence. Sergeant Ellis radioed for backup to search the neighborhood. Another officer took photos of the damage. They questioned Sophie, gently, who tearfully confirmed seeing Mommy's friend push Daddy. The officer nodded sympathetically, praising her bravery. Ambulance personnel arrived, checking my injuries. I refused a hospital run. Just let them patch me up. I had bruises, a small cut. Nothing major. Sergeant Ellis said, "We have enough to pursue charges. We'll get an arrest warrant for Bryce. You might want a restraining order, too." I nodded. "Yes, absolutely. He threatened me, threatened my family. He's also abusing Sophie's mother." The officer frowned. "We'll see if we can get her statement. If she cooperates, we can pin more charges." I doubted Lila would help, but maybe after this, she'd realize how dangerous Bryce was. As the cops left, I looked at my wrecked living room. Broken table, scattered pictures, my shoulder throbbing. Sophie clung to me, face streaked with tears, trembling. "Daddy, is he coming back?" I knelt, heart aching. "No, sweetie. The police will make sure he can't. I promise." She buried her face in my shirt. "I don't like him. He's scary." I swallowed, voice tight with emotion. "I know. You're safe now." The rest of the night, I barely slept. I paced, checking the doors and windows, comforted Sophie whenever thunder boomed. Around midnight, I collapsed on the couch, nightmares swirling about Bryce returning with a vengeance. But by morning, the police emailed me that they'd found Bryce's car abandoned near the highway. He was gone. Possibly he fled. They'd keep an APB out, but no guarantees. Anxiety weighed heavily on me. He could be anywhere. In the midst of this, I texted Lila. "Bryce attacked me at my house. The cops are after him. Protect yourself." She replied after an hour, "I'm sorry. Are you okay? Where's Sophie?" I typed, "We're both fine. No thanks to you letting that psycho into your life." She responded with a flurry of apologies, excuses. He threatened me. I was too scared to leave. I'm so sorry. I stared at the phone, conflicted. Yes, she's a victim, but her poor choices nearly cost us dearly. Finally, I typed, he's gone. If you see him again, call 911. And guess what? Sophie's not going to your place anytime soon. I want full custody until we know he's locked up. She simply replied, I understand. With that, I resolved to keep Sophie entirely with me. Legally, I might face a dispute, but if Lila was complicit in letting Bryce near Sophie, I had a strong argument. Keith agreed, drafting an emergency custody petition. He believed the judge would side with me given Bryce's assault. Sophie, meanwhile, refused to let me out of her sight. She crawled into my bed each night, nightmares haunting her. I kissed her forehead, telling her, You're safe here, baby. Work became a secondary concern. My boss, Lorna, saw my bruises and practically forced me to take some leave. Handle your family situation, she insisted. We'll manage the servo project. I appreciated the understanding, so I spent days comforting Sophie, cleaning up the living room, upgrading security. I even bought a new deadbolt, installed an extra chain, and double-checked the camera system. I wasn't taking any chances. A few days later, the phone rang. Redwood County Probation again. The same officer from before. She said they'd caught a suspect matching Marcus Walters' description in a neighboring county. Wait, what? My heart skipped. He's in custody? I asked. Yes, on a minor burglary charge. We're verifying ID. If it's him, we'll see about transferring him to Redwood for the old warrant. Did you still want to contact him about paternity? My head spun. Marcus might be in custody. Bryce is on the run. Are we doomed to drama forever? I told her yes, I needed to confirm if it was the same Marcus who might be Sophie's father. She said she'd let me know once they verified. I ended the call, slumping on the couch. This is insane. Sophie's father might be behind bars, her mother's abusive ex is fleeing the police, and I'm trying to provide a calm home. One day I hope this all ends. Lila appeared at my door one rainy afternoon, hobbling on her crutches. The camera feed revealed her waiting anxiously, so I opened up. Sophie was napping in her bedroom. Lila stood in the foyer, eyes full of shame. I'm sorry to show up unannounced, but can I see Sophie? I hesitated. She's sleeping. We're not doing your weekend visits right now for obvious reasons. Lila nodded, tears forming. I get it. I want to make sure she's okay. And you? Bryce is gone. I told the cops everything. They said you pressed charges, too. I hope they catch him. I studied her face, noticing new bruises healing. We're fine. He didn't do lasting damage. My tone was cold. Why are you really here, Lila? She swallowed. I needed to say I'm sorry for letting him near Sophie, for ignoring the danger. I was so lonely, so broken. I thought I deserved punishment. But after he hurt you, I realized how deep I'd sunk. I want help. Maybe therapy. Betty says she'll stand by me. I crossed my arms. Good. Sophie can't be in that environment anymore. You realize I'm pushing for full custody, right? Lila's eyes filled with tears. Yes, I do. And I won't fight it. I messed up. I just hope one day Sophie can forgive me. I'll do supervised visits if that's what you want. A wave of pity hit me. This was the mother of my child, whatever the biology, and she was broken by her own guilt, living in fear. I sighed. I won't keep Sophie from you if you're genuinely trying to get better. But I need to ensure she's safe. That's my priority. She nodded, voice trembling. Thank you. Can I just peek in on her, even if she's asleep? Reluctantly, I guided her to Sophie's door. She peered in from the threshold, tears slipping down her cheeks at the sight of our child dozing peacefully. Then she backed away, whispering, Thank you. As she hobbled out, I felt a strange mixture of relief and sadness. Maybe she can reclaim her life, or maybe she's too far gone. At least she's not fighting for custody. The next day, Redwood County Probation called back. The suspect was indeed Marcus Walters. They confirmed he had a lengthy rap sheet. They also found a note about potential father in a private arrangement. I explained the paternity question. The officer said, He's being transferred to Redwood soon. If you want a DNA test, you'd have to coordinate with a family lawyer or a local judge's order. I paused, thinking. Do I even want to confirm if he's Sophie's father? If he is, do I want that messing up Sophie's life? She's mine in every sense. Marcus is a criminal. Better to let that sleeping dog lie. But a sliver of me was curious, or maybe I wanted final closure. Ultimately, I told the officer, "No, thank you. I have custody of the child, and I'm not seeking paternal involvement from him. Let's just say I have no interest in contacting him." She agreed, noting that I could revisit if needed. We ended the call and I set the phone down, exhaling a shaky breath. It's better this way. Let him rot. The emergency custody hearing came 2 weeks later. Lila appeared in court, bandaged ankle, quiet demeanor. She told the judge she consented to me having primary physical custody due to safety concerns. She'd do supervised weekend visits at Betty's house. The judge, seeing her battered appearance and reading the police report about Bryce, swiftly granted me full custody. I walked out of that courthouse with an official order in my hand, feeling both triumphant and weary. Outside, I caught Lila's gaze. She managed a small smile. "Take good care of her," she said softly. I nodded. "I will." Life settled into a new rhythm. With full custody, I no longer worried about Sophie's weekends. We took time to paint her bedroom pink, just as she wanted. She blossomed at preschool, forging new friendships. I introduced her to the neighbors' kids who squealed over the backyard swing set. Betty occasionally came by, helping me with grocery runs or babysitting. We remained friendly, a subtle tension under the surface from our complicated history, but we found a respectful groove. Lila sought therapy, texted me updates about her progress, never pushing to see Sophie unsupervised. She claimed she hadn't heard from Bryce, and the cops still had no luck finding him. Possibly he fled the state. As for Marcus, Redwood County locked him up for his old warrants. I chose to keep that knowledge private from Sophie. She didn't need the turmoil of an ex-con father figure. We had no paternal claim from him. My attorney assured me that if he tried anything, the court would side with me, given his violent record and absence. So I let that ghost remain behind bars. Finally, one bright Saturday, I was in the yard, pushing Sophie on the swing. The sun warmed our faces, birds chirped overhead. She giggled, calling, "Higher, Daddy, higher!" Her laughter echoed, a balm to my soul. I thought of how far we'd come. From the day I discovered her blood type wasn't mine, to the savage fight with Brian, to the fiasco with Bryce, to the brush with Marcus. And yet, through it all, here she was, my daughter in every meaningful way. None of the betrayals had broken our bond. As I pushed her, I closed my eyes briefly. We survived. Yes, scars remained physical and emotional, but so did hope. I might not be a perfect father, but I was fiercely devoted to protecting Sophie from the darkness that nearly swallowed us all. She demanded an underdog push, and I obliged, sending her squealing skyward. In that moment, I sensed a new dawn, a chance to live without the constant shadow of betrayal or fear. Because in the end, the greatest revenge was building a life of peace and joy, proving that the chaos wrought by lies and violence could not shatter the love between a father and daughter. Biology be damned.